Welcome and good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the UKSimRacing community's GT3 League Season 11, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today marks round 3 of 9, and with it the conclusion of our early Spanish doubleheader here at the MotorLand Aragón circuit. Also known as the Circuito de Alcañiz in reference to the local town, this is a circuit which is rather young in terms of its history compared to most circuits in Spain, but its youth does not betray the fact this is a circuit that is highly technical in nature, and when combined with the sultry Spanish heat and also the odd conundrum of track limits, it is one where drivers will be hard pressed in order to get it right time after time, lap after lap. We'll Grand Prix layout, which will play host to our drivers today, spanning at 3.15 miles in length and 18 corners, and the majority of them being very tight at the corner apex and a number of extended straights of varying lengths between the corners. This is a circuit where overtaking is going to be limited to the straights, albeit boldness under braking could be key if a driver needs to make a late overtake. But as all our drivers get ready to go racing, the circuit falls silent for a brief moment as all our drivers currently sit in the driver's briefing. It gives us an opportunity to tell you a little bit about the circuit as we've just done and get ready to take you into tonight. This broadcast is being brought to you live from circuit side for the first time this season. Indeed, all broadcasts going forward will be live from circuit side, and well, you're tuning in via the official YouTube channel of UK Sim Racing Community. And if you're not subscribed to the channel currently, we recommend you do so that way you stay up to date with all the latest broadcasts, highlight reels and other videos presented by UK Sim Racing. In the commentary booth, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit and a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. Now we bring you all your racing action over the entirety of the season, and what a season it has been thus far, and we've still got a long way to go. And let's not get too far ahead of ourselves, because as we recap our calendar, we can see we've completed the first 2 rounds and started back on the 25th of June with round number 1 at the Fuji International Speedway, and they're kicking off in Japan in the foothills of Mount Fuji. We've got to see our drivers have an absolutely thrilling race of contention up and down the field, whether it was in the elite, the pro or the AM classes. There's plenty to talk about. And then going into round number 2 at the Circuito de Jerez, even more drama and brilliant battles afoot when we kicked off our Spanish doubleheader last time out on the 2nd of July, and perhaps the most notable moment in particular, the battle at the front of the field with Erik Røseth taking his first win of the season and therefore moving into lead in the elite class, and also in the AM class, Stein Orsani finally avenging the loss of season 10 where Jerez he fell short and was not able to bring home the win in the AM class, but in this season he's been able to do so on the second time of asking. But looking forward to today, it's the 9th of July and it's another Sunday. But after today with round number 3, round number 4 will see our drivers make their way to the United States of America for the Virginia International Raceway Circuit, also known as VIR, located in the aforementioned named state of Virginia. Our drivers they'll be taking on the fast flying circuit with its long straights and also its winding corners, and concluding the first half of the season on the 16th of July. We'll then take our break fortnight, which is there to respect the fact we have multiple official iRacing events going on, and therefore we're not looking to conflict with the schedule of the official iRacing calendar. But we'll return on the 6th of August with our 5th round of the season, and that'll also be in the United States of America we remain, albeit we make our way over to the state of Wisconsin for the picturesque Elkhart Lake. Well, in fact, not Elkhart Lake, my apologies there. As we double check our notes there, we go to Road Atlanta for the circuit in the state of Georgia, and we'll by the town of Brazelton. It is a circuit like no other when it comes to being a roller coaster ride of road racing, with its winding corners, its elevation changes from corner to corner, indeed from apex to apex, and it will be one not to miss when our drivers do return to the circuit. Then round number 6, we make our way to Spain for the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya, our 3rd Spanish venue, and it's interesting we have 3 Spanish venues on this calendar, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that very shortly as to why and how it relates to MotorLand Aragón in particular. But our drivers will make their way to the circuit, which is seen as an all-rounder circuit. Indeed, it's used for pre-season testing and balance of performance application for most series on the international scale, including Formula 1 and also the GT World Challenge. But our drivers will be taking it on the 13th of August for our 6th sprint in a row. Then round number 7, we make our way to neighbouring France for the Circuit de la Sarthe, also known as the Circuit des 20 Hours du Mans, or what we all love to know and refer to it as Le Mans. And there we'll see our first endurance race round of the season in round 7 and 9 on the 20th of August. And well, that's going to need no introduction in terms of the calibre of the circuit and why it's an endurance race round. And then round number 8, we'll make our way down under to Australia, which is where we'll stay for the conclusion of the season, starting with the Phillip Island Grand Prix circuit on the 27th of August in our final sprint race of the season, and then we'll make our way over to Bathurst for the Mount Panorama Raceway. You know I love it, ladies and gentlemen, the trip up and down the mountain for what will be our final race of the season, and aptly it is going to be an endurance race round on the 3rd of September to bring it all to a close on round 9 and 9. And as we only said moments ago, all broadcasts from this point onwards, including today's broadcast round number 3, are live from circuit side, no more post-round broadcasts, and indeed we've got plenty of racing to go. We're going on to our circuit for today then. the MotorLand Aragón circuit. The Grand Prix layout will play host our drives, with this circuit being located near the town of Alcañiz in the Teruel region of the state of Aragon in Spain. This circuit is one of 4 major circuits which make up what is the MotoGP calendar, and also is typically featured on the World Superbike calendar in Spain. And well, that's why it's an interesting quandary in the fact that we are running 3 circuits in Spain this season, and if you add one more and you do see the 4 Spanish circuits which make their way onto the MotoGP calendar on a regular basis. But focusing on this circuit in particular, as you can see from the circuit map provided by iRacing.com, thank you to them for the wonderful simulator and the circuit maps that come with it. This is a circuit that has a multitude of layouts, 8 official layouts that are known, of which 3 of them are FIA Grade 1. The Grand Prix layout which we're using today is one of them, the MotoGP layout is another, and then you have the shorter national layout which is used for touring car racing on a regular basis in the FIA World Touring Car Challenge Series. And well, those are 3 major layouts which are typically recognised, but there's also another 5 layouts which are of lower FIA grades down towards national grade. And well, this is a venue which is seen not just as a race circuit but also as a major venue across the country, and the fact it's for motorsport, also for leisure, and also for research in the world of motorsport. And that was the concept of this circuit when it was originally introduced in terms of the design phase and opened in 2009, in the idea that it's not just for motorsport but it's also for longevity, and it's to bring tourists year in year out but also create multiple jobs in the region and also with international companies. And what I can tell you one thing, MotorLand Aragón has been a success. And originally hosted what was at the time the Renault World Series of Formula Racing, and that's now been converted into the Formula V8 series as of 2015, and that's where this circuit started, but very quickly it's found itself taking on MotoGP, World Superbike, and also every so often World Touring Car, but now it is a staple of World Touring Car as well. Haven't seen Formula 1 go to it yet, or turn to the GT World Challenge, but you never know what could happen in the future. But as we see from the circuit map, whereas our drivers make their way across the start finish straight into turn number 1, the key theme is going to be about corner approach and application. I'm going into the open left-hander. It's a right-angled left-hander, the 90 left if you will, and as they make their way out of the opening corner, they'll come through the sweeper at turn number 2, and then to a bit of a slow sweeper at turn number 3, after which they'll then head up towards turns 4 and 5, where essentially the kink of 4 is a setup for the braking zone at turn number 5, and then exit out through the sweeper at turn number 6, is into the braking for the first hairpin if you will at turn number 7. There we could see some overtaking opportunities into turn 7, much like at turn number 1, but as the drivers make their way out of the corner up the short straight at turn number 8. Well, turns 8 to 9, they look very close together. However, this circuit map does not show you the fact that over the course of the entire layout of the circuit, there is an elevation change of 50 meters, and most of it is comprised in turns 8 to 9. If you will, it's the most legally close aspect in Europe to what would be the corkscrew of Laguna Seca in the United States of America, albeit as based on the current modern designs, and particularly as produced by Hermann Tilke, who is one of the many individuals behind the design of the circuit. Indeed, our drivers will make their way through the Spanish corkscrew, if you will, turns 8 to 9, and they'll need to try and get it right on the brakes through 8 to get the car stopped for turn 9, and then exit out. They'll sweep the way through Marc Marquez at turn number 10, while charging their way all the way through the kink of 11 and up towards turn number 12. And then we have the double right at turns 13 and 14, with the apex speed very dramatically coming down at turn number 14, and then into the sharp left-handed right angle corner at turn number 15, where it's all about planting the throttle and charging down what is essentially the 1 kilometer back straight towards turn number 16. There we have the final major pair of corners at turns 16 and 17, with turn 16 being a hairpin, and then turn 17 being the sweeping right-hander, then goes into the kink of turn 18, and then onwards towards the start-finish straight. Indeed, a lot of kinks, a lot of sweepers, and a lot of heavy braking zones, and quite a few straights. That means our overtakes are going to be commonplace on the straights, but this is one that's definitely all about the corners, and whoever can master the corners is going to come out king here in what is the region of Alcañiz. But as we now make our way over to our rule set for today, you can see in terms of car setup, drivers are not permitted to change their car without penalty at any point during the season. Indeed, we've got no car swaps so far, and car fuel load shall be restricted to 50% for all races, and that does lead to a little bit more strategic variety for our drivers in terms of when they do choose to pit over the long distance of whether it's a sprint race or alternatively in the endurance race. And we've already seen the effect where the pit window has expanded quite significantly over the course of the first 2 rounds. Now, qualifying wise, a lone qualifying format shall be used today, indeed for all sprint race rounds. And what does that mean in practice? It means that all of our drivers take to an isolated instance of the circuit, albeit they're all qualifying at the same time, but they don't see one other on circuit, and therefore they're all given plenty of opportunity to be able to put in their ideal qualifying laps. And we have no lap limit in qualifying. Drivers have 10 minutes to set the best possible time, and they have an unlimited number of laps within that, so they don't have to worry about potentially compromising laps. Indeed, it will drain on their time that's available to them, if you will, but at the same time, our drivers don't have to think they've only got 4 laps available, and therefore they can give it everything they've got. Now in terms of the races, meanwhile, we can see in general races shall commence via a double file rolling start, as is the tradition of the UKSimRacing GT3 League. There are no mandatory pit stop requirements, but when we say that, what we mean is there's no expectation for our drivers to have to come into the pits to do certain things, such as change tyres or alternatively take on fuel. However, the contrary is true in the fact that we are expecting our drivers to pit at some point in today's race. Indeed, in the sprint races, we normally do expect there to be at least one pit stop. Now, as for race stewarding, all race stewarding shall be conducted post-race. There's no live stewarding. And as for fast repairs, there is one fast repair available for each driver in a given race in case they pick up any damage to the car, and therefore they have the opportunity to have some repair work done. Now, in sprint race, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 17 or more instant points. Indeed, as we said earlier, track limits are going to be very interesting here in the fact we have heard down in the paddock in the build-up to today a lot of drivers talking about the fact the track limits are rather aggressive, and they have been picking up 1X's or 1 incident for track limit infringements each and every time. So we could see some drive-through penalties, and perhaps, albeit we don't necessarily want them to, they could be the decider of how things go in the long term here in Spain tonight. As all of our drivers get ready to make their way to the grid, we return to the circuit side. That's enough rules and regulation. And, well, let's take you through the schedule for tonight. Times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinated Time, +1 at UTC at +1. And as we can see, in just under 4 minutes' time, we'll be making our way into the qualifying session. 10 minutes in duration. All the drivers out on the lone instance of the circuit, all looking to get their best possible time. And track position is going to be absolutely pivotal here in terms of our driver's success. As we do apologise there for the overlay briefly refreshing. We just had a small bit of driver data being loaded in the background, so you have to excuse us for that. And then after qualifying, we'll have a 5-minute breather before we make our way to the grid for our 45-minute sprint race, and that'll be kicking off at approximately 8:15. But with regards to our ambient and track temperature right now, as you can see, it's a track temperature of 22 degrees centigrade, and it's 21 degrees ambient here. It's relatively cool conditions compared to what it could be in Spain, but with that in mind, of course, and the fact that temperature can come up rather rapidly around here, our drivers, I think, will be highly grateful for the fact those temperatures are quite low, and therefore they're not going to be biting too much into the tyres. As soon as you hit about 40 degrees centigrade, that's where you do start to really feel it on the tyre compound. But as our drivers are currently mostly parked up in the pit lane, we do see parked up there at the moment Erik Røseth, in particular, the Racing Lab Esports AM driver. Well, he's your elite leader at this time in the Drivers' Championship, and he's the man that everybody needs to try and beat in the elite class. And the fact he's gradually extending away at the top of the standings, albeit we're only 2 rounds in, but he has laid down the marker, and well, it's a marker that's going to be quite hard to beat. But meanwhile, speaking of stories, we do look to what is the Pro class, with Casper Brotman making his way on around for old dudes in cars, having a good performance the last time out at the Circuito de Jerez, and as he makes his way on around here now, looking to have another good day today, is the Dane and the 111 Porsche 992 GT3 machine. But as he heads on down and around, the key point, or the talking point, if you will, in the Pro class last time out was what happened to Aaron McGregor. And well, where is Aaron McGregor? He's currently parked up at the back of the pit lane for Protect Motorsport. And why do we need to talk a little bit about Aaron McGregor? Well, he has proven to be the early favourite in the class, as we do have a bit of difficulty in seeing his car close up, so we do have to sit with the distant camera angle there with the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo driver. They're being a little bit shy to the cameras, but we'll see plenty of him out of the circuit in due course. But the key point being that there was a bit of a slip-up last time at Jerez, albeit he brought home the win, making it 2 wins out of 2, and therefore he is leading the way by 8 points over Darren Sharples, but it looked very close at certain points, and it came down to who made the least mistakes there is, and McGregor was the one to come out on top, and the pace gap between him and the rest of the Pro class has also come down quite significantly, only to a 10th or 2 compared to the 3 tenths we saw at Fuji, and therefore McGregor right now is definitely in the driving seat and under a lot of pressure. But then we come onto the AM class, and as we do, we look to Satinder Dinsa as the Tiki SimSport Toyota driver from America makes his way on around there, and as he flows his way through the corner, getting quite a bit of oversteer, they're trying to get the power down, coming on through what was the left-hander as he rolls his way down into turn number 7. Well, as he comes on through, that was out of turn number 5 where he got the snap oversteer, if you will. Well, right now the number 10 driver, one of many, looking to try and chase down your championship leader of Steinar Sani, and he's only leading by a result of countback versus Jack Wyborn, with Sani picking up his first win of the season last time out, as we see the Racing Lab Esports AM2 driver making his way on down the round into turns 8 to 9. The proverbial Spanish corkscrew, if you will be a bit more extension between the 2 apexes compared to the Californian circuit at Laguna Seca, but you do get the point in terms of that switchback nature and the major elevation change that the drivers make the way through it. Before flying on out of Marc Marquez and onwards towards the next round of corners at turns 12 through to 15. But as Sani heads on down, he'll know that he's the man to beat here today, and Wyborn meanwhile will also have him in his sights, as we do believe that Jack Wyborn currently in the pit lane. You do see him parked up there for TPA Racing, albeit his Porsche is a little bit obscured at the moment. But the thing about Wyborn is 2 second place finishes on the bounce. He's yet to have a win, and well, at both races, both at Fuji and Jerez, he thought he may have had the win on the cards, not to be, and can he get it the third time a try? We'll have to wait and see. But as we look to Rhys Saunders currently making his way on around, the Team Year 1 driver, we have a brief moment to say hello to a good number of you guys and girls in the YouTube chat, including Martin Tilling, who will not be out on circuit today. Unfortunately, does not have the MotorLand Aragón circuit, but we have had some reassurances from him. You can see him there in the YouTube chat saying that he is going to be on the grid for the rest of the season, so we look forward to seeing Martin right out there. We also say hello there to Paul Joseph Clist, who said with regards to his expectations tonight and how he's feeling, he's been practiced most of the day, but still struggling and getting caught out on that one little right-left turn, and well, that one in particular being in reference to, I believe, the Spanish corkscrew at turns 8 and 9. And we also say hello to There's Nothing Here, who says good luck today. Oh, we're glad to have you here, and indeed thank you for the well wishes to all the drivers. And we also say hello to Exam there, who says good evening everyone, and also we say hello to Craig Tillerson, who says good luck in tonight's race, guys. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to head into qualifying. 10 minutes, all the drivers out on circuit, albeit in lone qualifying format, and therefore now we get to see who is going to come out on top and what's expected to be a very tight qualifying session here, for the simple reason track position is going to prove pivotal early on in the race, and indeed it could determine who exactly will come out on top after 45 minutes of racing. As we do see Brian Walker making his way on the wind up the hill towards turn number 5, coming into the braking zone via the left-hander at turn number 4. So what do you need to be able to do here at the Alcañiz circuit in order to have a good qualifying lap? Well, this one is all about cornering and direction change. This is perhaps the most technical circuit on the calendar with regards to its cornering nature, and therefore for our drivers, they will need setups which really do focus on getting those corner apex speeds down, also getting the car to point when they need it to out of the corner, and it's also got to be comfortable under direction change. We do have a number of key direction changes. You've seen Walker clear one of it, turns 8 to 9, but we also do have the direction change of the flow through turns 12 through to 15. We do have that left into double right into a left, and also the fact the car needs to be stable under braking and a slight bit of steering input. A lot of these corners around here, you don't have much time to be able to straighten the steering wheel before you have to back onto the brakes, as we do see there Walker coming out of the kink of 11 into 12, and now through what he goes of turns 13 and 14, and well, also on top of that, you need to be wary of track limits and the fact there's a lot of runoff error in this circuit with regards to the curves, but use those curves too much and you'll get an annoying 1x or 1 instant point, and that'll see your lap invalidated. But put it all together, and therefore it does mean you really need to feel the flow and also feel the car's dialed in. But you may be asking at this point, okay, but what about the extended straight, which we're seeing Walker making his way down right now up towards the turn 16 hairpin? Well, it's a good point, that one, in the fact that our drivers will want quite a bit of downforce on the car, particularly towards the rear, quite a bit of rear wing in order to settle that rear end down through the corners, but run too much rear wing and you may leave yourself vulnerable to an overtake down that straight and also onto the start-finish straight, as Walker makes his way on through turn number 18 to go on to his first flying lap of this qualifying session. But as we leave the satellite racing driver to it for the time being, we do look to Jack Wyborn, the driver we mentioned only moments ago for TPA Racing, who is looking to try and make it a win in Class A in the AM class for the third time of trying after 2 second-place finishes. He's in the Porsche 992, and in terms of the cars we're expecting to be up there, we are expecting the Porsche perhaps to be one of the stronger cars, given its cornering capabilities and also its low-speed apex approach capabilities, where this guy is the one with the strongest brakes, if you will, and also does have some of the best rotation out there by default, given the engine is located as far as possible towards the rear axle. The German manufacturer known where to place the engine in order to get the best cornering approach. But as we do see at Wyborn making his way out towards turn at number 16, well, we do have a large number of Porsches on the grid, but let's not count out the fact we also do have other manufacturers being represented here, including Lamborghini, and we can see here Joe Newman in one of a limited number of Lamborghinis for Empire Motorsport as he makes his way around in the Huracan Evo GT3, the Mark 1 Evo, if you will, the Evo 2 making its debut on the real-world stage quite recently in 2023. But as we do see Newman make his way on through, the Lamborghini being quite an all-rounder with some cornering approach there, albeit from what I've been gathering down in the garage, taking a little bit of a peek inside the Empire Motorsport garage, where I've been able to, they have been concerned about the stability of the Lamborghini going in today. They felt as though it has to be unstable to get the best cornering approach, but in the return, it's also proven to be quite a beast to keep control of, particularly when tyre wear starts to become an effect. But as he makes his way through turn number 10 and onwards towards 11, we are expecting at the other end of the spectrum the Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo, the 2020 machine, has been piloted by Mark Johnson here. To give you an example, the UKSimRacing driver making his way on down towards turn number 15. We are expecting this car to perhaps be the odd one out in terms of not being as strong as some of his peers, and the BMW M4 GT3 also to fall slightly towards that category, given that those cars have been more factored towards straight line speed and acceleration rather than cornering, albeit we've said that before about the Mercedes AMG, and Johnson has proven us wrong time and time again, particularly in Season 10, where at the handling circuits he was the fastest driver in the AM class, and it was on the power circuits where we saw a bit more equilibrium. But as he makes his way into turn number 16, number 44 driver here gearing up towards the end of his first flying lap, we've got time starting to come onto the board, and as Johnson flows on through and up the hill he goes. Right on through the left-hander here, hearing the roar of that V8 Mercedes engine, no supercharger, all naturally aspirated, no turbo bolted to it, and as he makes his way up towards turn number 1, that's going to put in P7 initially in class on what is a 1:58.51, but he's the best part of 2.2 seconds off of Kirkland, who's taken provisional pole in the Pro class, but we have got a long way to go in this qualifying session. But whilst we do have a brief moment, we are going to introduce 2 new drivers today who are making their debuts as of this round for the season, and that is Ian Manners from 52 Racing, as we do see the McLaren MP4 12C driver charges way around right now in the British bi-turbo V8 powered machine, albeit it has been superseded by the McLaren 570, or well, in fact by the McLaren 650S I should say, not the 570, not to get confused with the GT4 car, but this GT3 was replaced by the 650S GT3, which has subsequently been replaced by the 720S, which is now in its Evo variant, so therefore this McLaren may be 4 generations old, but at the same time still roaring on the iRacing platform. And well, for those who can master it, it is a very fast car, and also it does have quite a bit of style out of it, not just because of the wonderful livery that the 52 Racing driver is running, but also the fact you do have the flames spitting out the rear end. But as he makes his way through turn number 10, he's making his debut today in the Pro class, and we also do have a newcomer to the AM class in the form of none other than Sander Rustad, and we are just looking for him on circuit at the moment, albeit I don't think we'll quite find him at this time. We will see if we can find him in due course, but we do have Sander Rustad making his debut as well in the AM class, and he is making his debut for Team Norway Racing, and good luck to the pair of them as they make their debuts for this season. We look forward to seeing how they get on, and we're speaking of one Norwegian to another, that's Seaman Andre Livingston, who's just gone provisional pole in the AM class on a 56.940, absolutely staggering lap there. 1.2 seconds faster than anybody else in the AM class, and well, with just under half the qualifying session remaining, it's only appropriate that we gear ourselves up for a flying lap around this circuit, and who better to give us one than Joe Newman in the Empire Motorsport Lamborghini as he makes his way onto the start-finish straight. Charges his way up towards turn number 1, keeping the car over to the right hand side initially as he heads in towards the opening braking zone, braking at 100 metres and coming down to 3rd gear, charging over the apex, then bringing the car into turn 2. Flying right hander, abuse the curve there, let it rotate the car, and into turn number 3. He'll be coming on through here, lift off the throttle in 4th gear in order to just cut a little bit of speed off the car before heading into turns 4 and 5, and then going on to the brakes here, braking out to 4 into turns 5 apex now, down to 2nd gear, and then bringing the car back over to the left slightly to south run through 6 into 7, straight line in here for turn number 7 to go into the braking zone, down to 2nd gear using plenty of entry curve, and as he exits out, also abusing the exit curve now heading into turns 8 and 9. Now going into turn 8, it's about braking into 8 initially, down to 2nd gear, and then riding the brakes, training on the brakes down to 9, and as he clears the apex back on the power as soon as possible. You've got to believe the grip's going to hook up on those rear tyres as he now powers his way through turn number 10, tight as possible to the apex curve to carry all the speed as he builds his way up the gearbox into 5th gear, now getting ready for turn number 12. Braking here at what will be just after the 100-metre wall, coming down to it's the 3rd, but the car goes round there, a bit greedy with the speed and the turn in there, and that goes to show how easy it is to make a mistake as Newman gets it wrong and immediately it returns to the pit lane. But we will try and forget a continuation of the lap for another drive as we see Casperton instead parking up on circuit. He's had to abort on the lap, but meanwhile making the way on around here is Lewis Payne. making his way down through turns 14 and 15, and we'll head towards the end of his qualifying session. Given the fact there's no overtime in this qualifying session, we do have the clock strike 10 minutes, and that's it for our drivers. They are immediately taken back to the pit lane, and that's how they'll be set. But in the elite class, at the very top of the field, we do have right now Damien Lobbett, who's set the pace and will match him practically, albeit only out by I say match him practically. We have had updated times quite recently, and by 3 tenths is the gap now. But the point being, on the P2 overall position at the moment is this man, Chris Kirkland, and he is a pro driver, and right now your provisional pole sitter in the pro class as we do look to the overall standings, and that's how the top 35 currently intermingle amongst one another across all the different classes. Just a reminder for the uninitiated, points are only scored in the championship based on class finishing position. That's both in the drivers and the teams championships. But as we do see Kirkland making his way on through, Kirkland definitely laying down his mark today for Downforce Racing, and well, if he starts P2 on the grid, it'll be a huge opportunity for him as he makes his way up towards turn number 1. Albeit I don't think he's going to be allowed to finish this lap, but right now I think he'll be absolutely pleased if things finish as they currently stand. But as we look back to the class standings, only 9 elite drivers so far getting the time on the board. Our 10th driver, Cy Anthony, yet to get a time out there as he makes his way towards the end of his lap, going down towards the turn 16 hairpin. And as he comes down towards the braking zone, deceptive there in the fact you can see the national hairpin, which is before the full Grand Prix hairpin, but you could be mistaken for braking for the former rather than the latter. But as he comes towards the timeline, what's it going to be here for Cy Anthony? Given the fact he's only got 30 seconds left on the board, the Welsh Dragon flying and flaming hot on the side, he comes into the pits, so Cy Anthony will be starting from the back of the field in what has been a difficult qualifying session for him here at the MotorLand Aragón circuit. But meanwhile, as our drivers come to the end of this session, well, Damien Lobbett has set the pace in the elite class. Rhys Saunders goes at P2 in elite, and overall then a 55.771. He creeps in at the death of the session. Meanwhile, Erik Røseth, P3 in class, is the best he's able to achieve here today. But there will be Damien Lobbett on overall pole and elite pole with Chris Kirkland on the pro pole. And we didn't quite see who the pole sitter was there, but we will be able to get that data very shortly for you, ladies and gentlemen. But we do have what is there now 5 minutes before we go racing. And whilst we do have this warm-up session, in fact, we can now just take a moment to let you know that if you have been enjoying the broadcast at UKSimRacing, and indeed you've been following for some time, and if you've ever wondered how you can potentially support UKSimRacing, did you know there is a quick way to do so via our affiliates? For UKSimRacing is affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Swallow Meadow Sim Race Coaching, Race Anywhere, and Doom and Tweaks. And if you do head to our website, that's uksimracing.co.uk today, website will be appearing on screen right now, and there it is. Well, there's a link in the top right corner to our official Discord. Now, why would that be of interest to you? Well, firstly, if you ever want to be on the grid for any of our series or events, it is a mandatory requirement that you are part of the UK Sim Racing Discord. That's for the purposes of driver briefings and pre-race information, so that's given. But also on top of that, if you do join our Discord, we've got an absolutely friendly community that will happily welcome you no matter what your skill level on the simulator. And indeed, we've got a lot of individuals who are enthusiastic about real-world motorsport just as much as simulated motorsport. But also, there are a number of discount codes from our affiliates only available on the UK Sim Racing official Discord. And if you use one of those codes as part of a purchase, well, you as the consumer get a discount on your purchase, which is an absolute win for you. But also, on top of that, at UK Sim Racing, we will get a kickback from your purchase using the affiliate code. But because we are a non-profit organisation, every penny we make from our affiliate earnings is invested back into the community to fund future series, including future editions of the GT3 League and Porsche Cup, and we've got plenty more planned for 2023 and onwards. So do keep in mind, a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UK Sim Racing. But I can tell you one thing, ladies and gentlemen, the qualifying laps we've seen, some of those could go a long way for our drivers. And well, as we do look to Matt Strand right now, back to live pictures here with only 3 minutes before we go into the race itself with the gridding process. Will Strand making his way on down, and as he does, will right now absolutely key and eager to get things right. The Racing Lab Esports and Free Driver, and just put in a little bit more practice time. But everyone now absolutely set. And well, as we do say hello to Jay Weeks there, also to Chris Edison, and also to Newman Bass. Well, we can see there the mention that Joe Newman is the only Empire driver tonight who has been able to put a lap in, albeit, and indeed only one on the grid, as we're to understand, as well as we don't have Sam Congreve here today, from what I'm aware. So therefore, Empire Motorsport will be be looking to the one and only driver in the elite class. But meanwhile, looking from one Racing Lab Esports driver to another one, here's Alexander Tremino Mikkelsen, the Norwegian in the number 6 Porsche 992, racing in the pro class. And well, he's absolutely set and ready to go now, as he's just putting in a bit more practice time as well. And you may be wondering, why would drivers decide to put in a little bit more time in this final 5 minutes? Well, there's a couple of reasons for this. First, in the fact they may just be wanting to use this to settle down some pre-race nerves, in the fact that when you do have a 5-minute break before you go from qualifying to the race, it does mean that you start to sit around, and well, whilst you're sitting around, your mind starts to wander, and that's the one thing you don't want to have happen as a racing driver, is letting your mind wander. You want to be focused on the task at hand. But also on top of that, some drivers use it as a little bit of a time killer in terms of the fact they do get a little bit bored sitting in the pit lane, and understandable. They're all here to race, but at the same time, we have this 5-minute window to enable our drivers, if they need to take a rest room break, do so, but also give our drivers plenty of time to load their race setups, because you can imagine they may qualify in a particular setup, and then they'll switch setups for the race, particularly where fuel is concerned, and putting as much fuel as possible in the car with the 50% fuel tank limitation, but still they want all the fuel they can to give them as much longevity, potentially, or strategic variety going into the race. But also they may change some things on the car, such as, for example, the amount of rear wing they run. In qualifying, they'll decide to go for perhaps a less settled car because they know they'll only be going for a single lap, or a setup which is going to kill the tyres a bit more aggressively, but in turn, by using more tyre, they're able to get that better lap. But you won't want that setup in the race, because you'll want the tyres to last the full duration, or at least the majority of it, with the fact we can change tyres at the same time of taking fuel in these cars, and therefore we may see 1 or 2 tyres being swapped when the drivers do come into the pits. But as we do say hello to James P. GP2, who is cheering on there, I do believe, none other than Stephen Parker Hamilton, or Stephen PH, and Jack Wyborn in the AMS, and Rhys Saunders in the Elite. Well, it's great to see so many of you tune in. Let us know who you're cheering on, and if you haven't said hello yet, don't be shy, feel free to say hi. We don't bite here at UK Sim Racing, and the only biting we do is biting the brakes under braking into a quarter apex. And as Simon Hartley for TE Sim Sport Tyre makes his way down to turn number 12, we're now only 20 seconds away, ladies and gentlemen, from going to the grid, and will everybody absolutely itching here. Remember, this circuit, the MotorLand Aragón circuit, only introduced the iRacing simulator as of the latest season update, so this circuit is not more than 4 weeks old on the simulator platform. Our drivers had to get used to it. A lot of them did not even know it existed before going racing here today. Well, who is going to come out on top? Well, the world map is complete. Let's find out as our drivers make their way to the grid. It's time for round number 3 of season 11 of the UK Sim Racing GT3 League. So as our drivers make the way onto the grid, let's take you through how they all line up for today. It is Damien Lovett for Symphony Esports who takes pole position for what is the second time this season, following up his pole position from Fuji International Speedway. But alongside him on the front row of the grid is fellow elite driver from Team Year 1 of Rhys Saunders, his best qualifying position to date. And then on the second row of the grid we have Chris Kirkland, your pro pole sitter for Downforce Racing, with a staggering time ahead of Erik Røseth for Racing Lab Esports AM. Then on row number 3, it's Peter Cox for UKSimRacing Clark, joined by ProTech Motorsports Ryan Moles, with Sam Sherwood for ProTech Motorsport, following up on row number 4, joined by Thomas Aspal for Racing Lab Esports AM2. Then on row number 5, completing the top 10, it's Joe Newman for Empire Motorsport, and then it's your second pro driver in the form of Old Dudes and Cars, Casper Brotner, with a good qualifying lap, his best of the season. Chris Constable at P11, best of SP11, starts on our 6th row of the grid for UK Sim Racing Moss, joined by Phillips GP's Giles Phillips. And then we have on row number 7, the AM pole sitter, Simon Andre Livingston for Racing Lab Esports AM, in a staggering pole time of his own there, the best part of 1.1 seconds faster than the next AM driver Jack Wyborn, what will come to him in a brief moment. And joining Livingston on row number 7 is Matt Strand for Racing Lab Esports AM3. Casper Tunstead and Ryan Walker for Peak Sim Racing and Satellite Racing make up your 8th row, with the elite driver Walker having a difficult qualifying session, it would seem. And then behind them it's Darren Sharp, well in fact not Darren Sharples, we get one row ahead of ourselves there. It's Aaron McGregor for ProTech Motorsport, joined by UK Sim Racing Prices Alan Lever, who make up row number 9. Then on row number 10 it's Darren Sharples for UK Sim Racing Price, joined by Alexander Truman and Mikkelsen, who completes your top 20 for Racing Lab Esports AM. Then on row number 11 it's Ben Thompson, the privateer, joined by Old Dudes and Cars is Daniel Pays. On row number 12, we have the parent of Lewis Payne for ProTech Academy and TPA Racing's Jack Wyborn. And then on row number 13, we have Stephen Parker Hamilton for TPA Racing and UK Sim Racing Monsters James Conley. On row number 14, Matt Maddox and Ian Mans line up together, the 52 Racing driver making his debut today, starting P28, and then completing the top 30 is Rudy Avitsland for Racing Lab Esports AM2 and Slow and Steady Racing's Stuart Pearson. Then starting P31 on the 16th row of the grid, it's UKSimRacing Clark's Mark Johnson, joined by Neil Smith for Disaster Prime Racing, with Matt Edmondson for UKSimRacing Clark starting on row number 17, joined by Simulation Motorsport Sean Gaffney. Then on row number 18, Satinder Deansa for TK Simsport Tyre and his teammate Simon Hartley, they line up together P35, P36, and they're followed up on row number 19 by Thomas Barju and Steinar Sani, the Racing Lab Esports AM2 driver having a difficult qualifying session after a stellar day at Jerez last time out. Aaron Beaver starts P39 on row number 20, joined by Olympus Esports' Paul Joseph Gliss, who completes top 40. Then on row number 21, it's Downforce Racing's Kerry Kokoran and Sonny Anthony, who didn't get a lap on the board. Neither did Rob Armstrong or Ricky Ping, with the UKSimRacing Moss Aspire Racing Team drivers. They're starting P43, P44 on row number 22, the final full row of the grid, and then starting last but not least, in fact, not able to make it to the grid from what we understand for Team Norway Racing due to a technical issue with the car, therefore a retirement before we've gone green flag racing, Sander Rustad, who won't be making his debut out on circuit today. Then he'll be making his debut in a week's time at Virginia International Raceway. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, the grid is all set, and as our drivers just make the way on around right now, we are only moments away from green flag racing, and we'll Rhys Saunders versus Damien Lobbit. We haven't seen these two share a role in the grid before, and we're sitting on the front row, but what do we know? Well, Damien Lobbit is always an ever-present threat, and if he's up the front, he has shown the pace in qualifying, and he'll be looking for the win in the race. We saw that Fuji, but here with Rhys Saunders, well, making his debut in Season 10 of the GT3 League, full of strategic blunders, particularly at Okayama when he tried to go for a major undercut without the fuel required to get him to the end of the race. But since then, he's tightened it up, and indeed, he's made two great results so far. But today, he's looking to go one step further and potentially go for the win. But also, Chris Kirkland starting P3, your lead pro driver Downforce Racing. He'll be feeling as though there's an overall podium in the car today, albeit at the same time, he's got to keep in mind that our drivers don't accrue any points for overall position, it's all class position. But when a pro driver has a shot at a potential top 5 overall, if not the podium, then you absolutely want to go for it. And meanwhile, looking further on down the order, Simon Andre Livingston starting P13 as all the cars now begin to crowd together in the run down towards the turn 16 hairpin. Absolutely packed grid, but for the Racing Lab Esports Aaron driver, a very strong qualifying session. Could it be a win? That's a given. We never like to write anything into the books until that checkered flag, otherwise the commentator's curse will come in. But as our drivers all head up towards the final couple of kinks now, they make their way out of the hairpin. It is time, ladies and gentlemen, as the safety car begins to peel away for what is Damien Lobbit to take us away for 45 minutes of racing at the Circuito de Alcañiz, also known as MotorLand Aragón. Lights out, away we go for the third time this season as Damien Lobbit leaves it lane and makes his way out towards turn number 1. But immediately Kirkland on the charge. Kirkland up into P2 as they come through the opening corner as everybody roars their way through the left-hand 90-degree hand corner. They make their way on towards turn 2 without a flash of instance. They make their way all the way through the sweepers and up towards turn 5 for the first major braking zone. But so far, everybody making it through clean as we can see a little bit of movement here between Thomas Aspau and Joe Newman. Sam Sherwood as well losing outside as they head onto the brakes at turn 5, and as they come through the left and now make their way towards the right-hander. That's Algier trying to fight his way back through versus what is Peter Cox. He looks up the inside of Cox and now goes all in for the move for P5 in the elite class. But a good start for Aspau, and meanwhile Cox loses out multiple places to start losing 2 in particular. Behind, meanwhile, a little bit further back, we've got Giles Phillips also on the charge here versus Casper Brotner as Phillips trying to look round the outside. Oh, but Brotner in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo can't quite do it in turns 8 to 9 as they make their way off the corner. Behind them, Aaron McGregor, having had a difficult qualifying session at the Protect Motorsport trying to make some early gains, and the Scotsman right now in P7, he's gained 1 place overall, but he has not gained any class places, and the biggest loser at the start inside our top 20 was your AM pole sitter, Simon Andre Livingston. He's lost 4 places overall, no place in the AM class so far, but a major loss in terms of overall position, but he won't be too worried about that, given the fact his concern is just taking the AM class win here today, as he's got Alan Lever looking up the inside of him. The Lever backs out there after trying to intone an early move, but as they all come down through turns 14 to 15 and onwards towards the back straight they go. Now be a test of who's got the best X out of 15 and who's got the drag race speed all the way towards the turn 16 hairpin, was the drivers all charged way down. And meanwhile, look a bit further back to Satinder Deansa, who has gained 5 places in the AM class since the start. I think we have had a major incident in the AM class between a couple of drivers, particularly Stephen Parker Hamilton and James Connolly, from what I'm hearing in my ear. We'll take a look back at that in due course. But as we see Deansa looking for the move, he's looking to the inside versus Edmondson, and this will be for P4 in the AM class, all in on the brakes here. The TC Tower driver However, Edmondson not fighting this too hard, I think, respecting the fact it's a 45-minute race, and therefore he'll want to just manage the pace right now. But Deans has got other ideas and wants to make progress nice and early. But as they make the way up the hill towards turn number 18 and onto a new lap after one lap of racing, it's Damien Lobbit who leads ahead of Chris Kirtland P2, Rhys Saunders P3 ahead of Erik Røseth P4, Ryan Moles P5, Tos Aspal P6, and then we have Joe Newman P7 ahead of Peter Cox P8, followed by Giles Phillips P9, and then Casper Brotner P10. As we see there, Phillips looking for the move on Cox. I think Cox has got an automated slowdown for his concerns, and as they make their way through turn 5 and up towards 6, Giles Phillips gaining another place here and making headway very quickly indeed. But as they come in towards now turn number 7 and onwards towards 8, Phillips will know he's got a way to go to face up towards his pro rival for the lead of the pro class of Kirkland, who is 6 seconds clear. As meanwhile Cox trying to come back here at Phillips, goes up the inside to turn number 8, and Phillips lets it go, aware of the fact that Brotner's right behind, and Brotner will be back in Phillips' position very shortly. But as they come out to turn number 9 onwards towards 10, we look a little bit further back, and we look in particular to Thomas Barjack as he makes his way down the hill in the Rexy machine, livery being based on the replication of the real world livery that made its feature in the centenary of the 24-hour Le Mans by one of the Porsche GTE 911 teams. And as we do see the number 14 driver making its way through turn 10, down towards 11 he goes, and then up towards 12 right now, and gained 6 places in the AM class since the start, and 8 overall. The Britain is absolutely flying, as is Sean Gaffney behind. Will be Gaffney not making as many gains in the BMW M4, but the simulation motorsport driver there taking plenty of apex at turn number 30. He's got to be careful of that, because he will start to pick up instant points if he's abusing it too much. And as he comes down towards turn 15, with the Scotsman here also looking to go for gold, as he gets a much tighter exit out of turn 15. And now in the draft, I think Gaffney could have a potential run here if he gets it right, not into turn 16 necessarily, but if he's able to now his exit out of 16 like he did at turn 15, he may have the run onto the start finish straight as we ride on board with the number 7 driver, who appropriately is P7 in the AM class. When he comes down to the brakes here, trying to find a way in versus Barjack, but he can't seem to find it at the moment, and they're just getting a little bit too aggressive on the steering wheel. But you can see the car being yanked around effectively, and then a bit of power oversteers. He tried to get him through and had to reset the car, so he's lost a couple of attempts there, and well, Gaffney not able to make further progress right now as he heads on to another lap. But as he does, Cy Anthony, who started from the very back of the field, he's made 10 places thus far, the elite driver. He's P9 in class, with Sam Sherwood into the pit lane already. Something's gone wrong for Sherwood, not quite sure what's happened for him, but the elite driver there has dropped down the order. But as Science makes his way uphill, trying to look for the move here versus what is Aaron Beaver, the pro driver, but the Audi R8 driver here, I think, while Science is flashing him to say, let me go, we're not in the same class, we don't need to fight. I think Beaver right now just focusing on one thing, and that is keeping the Audi on the road, and understandable there, the Audi with strong cornering characteristics, and I think just letting Science do what he's got to do. Speaking of which, the Welshman goes up the inside there for Symphony Sports. Can he get this done? With a drag race up towards turn number 8, he'll try and force the inside back open here into the right to left, and he gets it done. Slight as he makes his way to P31 overall, as he now carries on and looks to go after next target Sean Gaffney for P30. But as they make the way on through, we do have a moment to look to Mark Johnson. And Mark Johnson here, having just made a move on Neil Smith, the UKSimRacing Clark driver. Well, he's gained overall position on Smith. That's overall P25. It's not for class position, with the pro overtaking the AM. And as they come through 14 into 15, you can see here everyone now starting to end up in a line of stone sequence here, a little bit of a train, if you will. But this is where the racing really starts to become intense, because for all the drivers now, they've had their initial fun on the opening couple of laps battling for position, and that's all about consistency. And speaking of which, we've had an instant further back, which is, oh my good lord, and well, we were going to talk about this incident, which I think has involved Paul Joseph Clist, and what is there? Well, I believe that is not Sean Gaffney, that is Ricky Pink, but I think also some other drivers have been caught over. Clist there tries to turn the car around, Gaffney takes avoiding action, but it's gone very wrong, and we'll get a replay of that very shortly. But first, we need to get a replay of what happened on the open lap between Stephen Park Hamilton and James Conley. As they made the way down towards, what was that? I do believe this was turn 10. Well, this is Stephen Park Hamilton losing the rear car slightly, and you can see there Park Hamilton having to slow the car down in order to try and get it back together. But Conley coming through the corner just after him was flat out in the Ferrari and just had no time to react. well, I think that'll be classified as a racing incident, but at the same time, both drivers will be frustrated with how that happened. Matt Maddox had to take evasive action as well, but as we take a look back from James Connolly's perspective, you'll see what happens to Mark Hamilton goes a bit deep, the car starts to wobble, and Connolly at this point is planted foot to the floor. If he lets off the throttle too much, the rear of his car will let go as well. So there, Connolly just in the wrong place at the right time to end up tapping the back of the TPA racing car and the UKSimRacing Moss driver in a frustrating opening lap, and Matt Maddox also having to take evasive action. And only moments ago we had an incident. In fact, on the open lap we also had an incident to Sam Sherwood. This is what happened to the ProTech Motorsport driver. You're looking at the Porsche in the centre of the screen, and well, looking up the inside there was one of the Ferraris, and well, was there a bit of contact there? I think Sherwood may have just gone round of his own volition, but the ProTech Motorsport driver there in a very unfortunate error. We do take a look back. We in fact look back from the rear of his car as he made his way on in. And you'll see here the Ferrari, number 12 Ferrari coming up behind. That was Charles Phillips as they made their way through the corner. It was a bit of contact there between Phillips and Sherwood, and it sent Sherwood on round. Whether it was contact to the car or netco contact, either way, we can't discern, but definitely there, unfortunate for them. And well, after that, we do return to live pictures for a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, as we do get ready to queue up what happened to a couple of drivers on lap number 3, particularly Sean Gaffney, Paul Joseph Clist and Ricky Pink, as they were involved in quite a significant incident. We're looking at Paul Joseph Clist at the moment, but in terms of moves, not too many more moves being made at this time. Everybody right now just settling down into a rhythm as we do look here to the battle for P17 in the Pro Class between Kerry Kokorin, the downforce racing driver, under pressure from Rob Armstrong. It's a battle of the German manufacturers, Porsche versus Mercedes. And as we do see Kokorin getting the better exit, which we'd expect by default from the Porsche, and then Armstrong is able to respond with the guttural roar of the V8 there versus the 6 cylinders of the Porsche. As we see the Mercedes driver taking a weave to the inside, not enough of a run on the start-finish straight. Matt Maddox getting closer and closer as the privateer hitting the number 20 Porsche now is trying to cut it round the outside from turn 1 into 2 versus Armstrong, but as they come through, he has to settle back down. But he's got to be aware of the fact he's got Stephen Parker Hamilton getting close behind him for P8 in the AM class, and as they come up towards turn 5, Parker Hamilton's going to go all in, and Maddox there more in the wrong place at the wrong time as Armstrong goes on. Maddox follows him, and will Parker Hamilton will come from Armstrong, will lose not just the opportunity to go hunting after what was Kerry Kokorin, but now it's the fend off Maddox, who's trying to make a recovery here to chase after Parker Hamilton as they make the way out to turn number 7 out towards 8-9. But a difficult one now. I think Maddox may have been blinded by seeing Armstrong go long into the braking zone and thought, okay, I'll do the same. And it's very easy to get caught in a rhythm with another driver, and Armstrong just missing the mark entirely under braking into turn 5. But as they get themselves back together and everyone calms down, meanwhile we look to Satinder Dinsa as he heads on through turns 12, 13, 14, but got a car off the road there. That was Mark Johnson who got it wrong at turn number 12 as Matt Edmondson came on through, as did Cy Anthony. So Johnson falling short. The Mercedes drivers here really struggling today as the UKSimRacing Clark driver now tries to get himself back together. He's P15 in class. He does have Aaron Beaver behind him, and Beaver trying to look for an opportunity as meanwhile we look to Lewis Payne versus Ian Manners, where there's Payne on the left of your picture, Manners on the right, and the McLaren going all in on the brakes. Payne says okay, 2 can do that, albeit the Porsche a bit different on the outside line, but Manners cuts him off, and the 52 racing driver gains another place as he makes his way up to P13 in the Pro Class, and will Payne now losing 1 place compared to his starting position in class and trying to make a bit more headway, where he'll be in the tow there on the McLaren, but I don't think he's got the straight line speed. He's gradually gaining, but it's nowhere near enough as they make their way onto their 6th lap of the circuit and coming through left into right here. Well, for Manners, it's all about just simply charging on here and trying to keep that car pointed in a straight line. But looking from there, we look to Aaron McGregor, who's up the inside there. Oh, that way it's Chris Constable for P5 in the Pro Class. And now Brian Walker's trying to have his way around as they make the way through the right-hander at turn number, I do believe, number 7, and Walker going all the way around the outside console. It's going to be side by side into turn 8 as they come into the braking zone, but Walker gets it done. Console backs out, and well, backs out in time to defend versus Casper Tunstead, who's still got the door open as Console overextends his braking point at 9, and as they make the way for it side by side between the 2 Porsche drivers, there's nothing in it as they come round the long left hand, and Mark Marquez at turn 10, and as they exit, you can see that Console wanting to lift out to avoid impeding track limits, and meanwhile Tunstead gets the move done. The Peak Sim Racing driver absolutely being bold and brash as needed to get the move done and gain another place. But as they head up towards turn 12 and 13, I think it's only right we take a look back at that sequence and how it all kicked off. Well, this was Aaron McGregor looking around the outside of Constable, going through what was turns 2, 3 and up towards 4, 5, getting the outside to inside into 4, and for McGregor, well, if he's not out front leading the way, he's leading the way in overtaking the Pro class, it would seem, as he made his way into turn number 7. He'd already got this done, but then we jump on board with Casper Turnstead, and watch this with the UKSimRacing driver. This is smart driving. Now you can see Walker, and what is there? His arrival of Constable going to be battling hard, and with Constable on a compromise line, Turnstead goes, okay, I can extend my braking zone, I can compromise Constable's line, and then being on the outside line, the elevation drop into the apex is better for Turnstead. He's got camber on the road surface, meanwhile Constable hasn't, and that's why Constable goes long there. He can't get the car to stop naturally like he would on that inside line, and that's how Turnstead got the move done to follow through after McGregor and Walker. Well, a great bit of racing between the quartet, and as we return to live pictures now, 12 minutes into this race, we still do have just over half an hour to go. We've got plenty more battling to come, and well, speaking of battling, we do look to Aaron Beaver here, who right now the Audi R8 driver in amongst the medley of German machinery there. It's a Mercedes ahead of an Audi, followed by a Porsche and a BMW, so all 4 German manufacturers being represented in a single camera shot. And as they head through turn 2 up towards 3, Beaver trying to make his way past Mark Johnson, and Johnson right now really trying to fight to keep the American behind him, and it does not look to be a happy day right now for Johnson in terms of that Mercedes having to be wrangled around the circuit here, albeit Johnson doing everything he can, but the Mercedes just not going well at MotorLand Aragón, it would seem. But as they head up towards turn number 7, right now Beaver stays behind, but meanwhile Steinar Sani looks up the inside of Thomas Bartak for what is P6 in the AM class, and as they make the way out to the right and up towards turn number 8, Sani gains another place, albeit starting from what was a long way down the order, starting from P13 in the AM class. It was a dismal qualifying session. Sani's got to do this the hard way, and right now he is picking his way through the order little by little. He's up 7 places in class already, and well, now it's 17 seconds between him and class leader Simon Andre Livingston, his fellow Racing Lab Esports AM teammate. And I think right now Sani will be looking to try and get onto the podium by the end of it. His next target is Matt Edmondson, who is 4 seconds up the road and managing his pace, but Sani is faster. As they head down through turns 14 and 15, right now for Steinar Sani and many, tyre wear is now also going to play a pivotal part and managing the car, particularly as those tyres start to wear down the compound. You won't have as much grip available, but you'll expect that grip to be available by default. But as we talk about that, meanwhile 2 drivers at the front of the field who are pushing each other very hard right now. Damien Lobbett and Rhys Saunders, your 2 leaders out front by 2 seconds over Erik Røseth as they make the way up towards turn number 5, what is the 8th time of asking. Onto the brakes they go, and the key point being here, well, for Rhys Saunders, the BMW M4 is naturally considered to be a bit more of a stable race platform. It's a very bulky car, front engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain, which means that with the engine in the front and the drive being down through the rear wheels, the nose leads the car, whereas with the Porsche that we're right on board and looking back from the rear of Damien Lobbett, because all the weights in the back, the engine being towards the back, plus also the drive rope goes through the rear wheels. This car very aggressive in its rear tyres. It does normally enact more rear wear compared to front wear. Meanwhile, the BMW M4 will have a bit more rear wear, but not as much compared to its front wear in terms of that relative ratio. But when we do consider that, Lobbett right now will need to protect those rear tyres. I think for Saunders, what he really needs to do is to keep pushing the 666 right. He's got to keep him on his toes and force him to push that Porsche. If he can do so, then he may be able to bait out the mistake from Lobbett, because right now there's nothing between the 2 of them. Albeit Saunders does seem to be really trying to make an aggressive approach in this race. He's made a great headway since the start, after what looked to be a lost P2 to Chris Kirkham, but Kirkham then falling back to Saunders, keeping his head in it to win it. And as they make the way down the backstretch right now, the 1 kilometre stretch up towards turn number 16, well, Lobbett defends here in the middle of the road. Saunders follows him, but you can definitely see Saunders is thinking about a move. If he switches back and he goes for a very late dive on the brakes, and well, that came out of nowhere, but Lobbett cuts back and Saunders can't get it stopped in time. And Damien Lobbett says, I've seen this one too many times before, Rhys, you're going to have to try something new. And Lobbett retakes the lead this race, albeit as they make the way onwards towards turn number 1. We saw a message there from what was, I do believe, Sam saying, how Sandy will Rhys get in this week's race? Well, we just see there, Rhys Saunders has been teeing it up for some time, and well, in the end, Damien Lobbett being able to counter it perfectly. As they make their way through turns 2 and 3, Erik Røseth now within a whole second of these guys as they head up towards the left-hander at turn number 5, the first major corner, if you will. And as they come on through now, Røseth's going to be thinking, okay, I've just seen the 2 of them battle. I wonder if it's going to happen again, and can I get involved in this? As meanwhile, we look back to Chris Kirkland, the downforce racing drive, very comfortable in the pro lead at the moment. He's 6 seconds clear of Giles Phillips, but to be fair, Kirkland in a world of his own in terms of class pace. Last lap from Kirkland, a 57.06, Phillips a 58.12. Kirkland right now is extending that lead in spades, and well, the American driver absolutely delivering here at MotorLand Aragón. But look from the front of the field towards the back of the field, we do look to the driver of Darren Sharples. Right now for UKSimRacing, Bryce making his way on through what is their turn at number 7 up towards 8.9 he goes, and will the Porsche 992 at 777 machine currently chasing down where's Alexander Trevino Mikkelsen and looking for P8 in the pro class, albeit these two very similar pace right now. Sharples in fact a bit compromised over the last couple of laps. He tries to get his way through, no way through at this time. As meanwhile further behind, Ian Manners here trying to cut his way past Jack Wyborn. Up the inside of turn 10 he goes, and that's for overall position, not class position. And Manners making some more progress in the number 52 race, the 52 racing car. Well, appropriate door number there for the team name as the McLaren MP4 12C spits the flames wherever present and heading onwards towards the end of this lap. Manners' next target will be Bevan Thompson, who is at 3 seconds up the road, but before that he'll need to pass Kerry Kukoran, who is a lap down just in front there, and Kukoran will be aware of the blue flags. As they head onwards towards the end of this lap, looking back to Darren Sharples a bit further up the road, and we've got a car going a bit slow on the inside. That's Paul Joseph Cliffs, who's lifting out there to respect the blue flags, but I think Sharples will feel those. This is a bit of an inconvenient time. Meanwhile, it's going to be a move here from Trevino Mikkelsen, as we do have our overlay refreshed, and we do apologise for that. Not quite sure why that's happened, but Trevino Mikkelsen up the inside there of Simon Andre Livingston, and the two teammates from Racing Lab Esports and deciding to swap positions here. And I think the idea is that Simon Andre may be able to keep Sharples at bay for a time and enable Trevino Mikkelsen to run away with that P8 in the pro class and go hunting elsewhere. But as they make their way in towards turn number 1, time will tell, keeping the fact that Livingston's goal first and foremost will be that win in the AM class, and with Jack Wyborn and now gradually building some momentum. In fact, last lap Wyborn did match Livingston for pace. Wyborn's only 4.5 seconds behind, so therefore he'll be thinking out a potential opportunity to chase down the leader, but heading on towards what will be this lap number 10. We've got plenty more to come. We have got some pit stops ongoing. Matt Edmondson, the first AM driver into the pits for his scheduled pit stop. He's dropped down the order. He was P5 at the time of coming into the pits. He's dropping down to P10 as a minimum now. But is that a sign of an early undercut from the driver? And indeed, can Edmondson find a way to jump his way up through the order? Well, we will see. But meanwhile, we look back to the battle for the overall and elite lead here between Damien Lobbett and Rhys Saunders as they come on down. And we show you the overall standings on the left-hand side of your screen. They show you the top 35 for a time here, just to give you an idea of where everybody is in relation to one another across the classes. But as Saunders gets a bit of a slow run out to turn 15, Lobbett right now keeping the middle ground. He knows that Saunders will be thinking about it time and time again. He's proven already he can do it, and he can brake very late, but every time he does it, of course, he will be taking a lot of life out of the front tyres and the front brakes. But as they come through the left-hander turn number 16, Røseth closing up, but now Saunders very close on corner exit. We jump on board here with the 64 BMW as they make the way through the King of 18 and onto another lap. And Lobbett there, you can see he's not got the straight line speed. Saunders has, he's got the toe as well. It's a 10th as they cross the start-finish line, and as they make their way towards turn number 1, it's going to be a move up the inside from Saunders for the lead of this race. Lobbett's on the outside, he tries to carry it all the way through. Respectful racing given between the two of them as they come through turn number 2. Lobbett's still on the inside. Røseth closed up behind as well now as they come into turn 3, and Lobbett retakes the lead by a hair as they head up towards turn number 5. Onto the braking zone they go. Saunders all over the back of Lobbett, and it's gone wrong for it's Damien Lobbett. That car goes round, he catches it in time. Now, was there contact? Was it just Lobbett under braking who got it wrong? We'll have to wait and see. We will have a replay in due order, but Rhys Saunders takes the lead of this race, and Erik Røseth moves into P2, albeit now Lobbett's got Ryan Moles immediately behind him, and the Symphony Esports driver will have the Protect Motorsport driver baying for a move here as they come down to turns 8 and 9, and Lobbett with that slide, he will have overheated the tyres, and now he's got to try and cool them down right at a time. We need the tyres to give him everything they've got in order to stay in P3. Well, you can feel for the 666 driver here for the simple reason he's in the worst possible place at the worst possible time, and that pressure is going to be absolutely unbearable. I think he's been able to get a good run out of turn 9, and therefore he's been able to give himself some breathing room for the time being. But we do take a look back at what exactly happened there between them and how the move was made, and here is the replay. Well, if there was contact, it would have been netcode contact most, because there was no physical contact between the two cars. Unfortunately, if it was netcode contact, but if it's just lob it, losing it under the pressure on braking into turns 4 and 5, you can understand that Saunders really putting the pressure on over the last couple of laps, and in the end that pressure manifested itself. But either way, it's happened, and right now, as we return to your live pictures, there's your top 5 occupying the screen. Albeit our cameraman a bit shy of getting Rhys Saunders into the shot, but there we go. And as they make the way through turn number 16, Røseth now right in the prime position to go hunting as they make the way up the hill. But as they charge the way up the hill towards the start-finish line, well, meanwhile, with all the battling we've got going on, we did have an incident earlier on between what was, we believe, Simon Hartley and Matt Maddox, and here's a replay of what happened between them on lap number 9, 3 laps ago. Well, this was the TE Simsport Tower driver making his way into turn number 14, and the number 16 Porsche 992 coming down the hill and into 15. The rear sliding loose there, and well, in the end, Hartley just getting the car back together. We're not quite sure what happened to Matt Maddox, and that was a separate incident. We do have a replay of what happened to Matt Maddox, and this was down towards turn number 16 into the hairpin for the number 20 Privateer, and he came down onto the brakes. So he just misses braking point here. He does indeed, and he has to stop the car. He's just gone a little bit too adventurous there, plus the dirty air of Sean Gaffney's car would not have helped, and Maddox rejoins the racing line. As we return it to your live pictures now, ladies and gentlemen, we're at the halfway stage of this race. Some pit stops are unfolding, and as they do, well, right now at the front of the field, it's Rhys Saunders versus Erik Røseth, with Damien Lobbett, P3, was your race leader only moments ago, and as he heads on through the long left here, well, we do have a prediction from Oyvan in the YouTube chat to say that Røseth is playing the tyre game. He will be P1 in the end. Well, placing your bets there, Oyvan. We look forward to seeing whether those come to fruition or not, but Rhys Saunders right now, I think, will make sure to try and hold on to that lead for every penny's worth as they make their way through turns at 13 and 14. Lobbett, however, is not out this either. He will try and come back a bit later on, feeling as though he's just got to calm the car down, but he's doing a good job of doing that as they make their way down through turn 15 and onwards towards 16. But as they charge on, meanwhile, it would be rude of us not to look a little bit further down the order. Indeed, some growing battles, including the one between Mark Johnson here and Lewis Payne for P13 in the Pro class. As they come out to turn number 9, and Mark Johnson's now making a bit more of a successful recovery drive. He has gained two places relative to his starting position, and as soon as I say that, the commentator's curse strikes, and goodness me, well, the number 44 Mercedes goes around there on the exit of 10 onto 11, and well, for Mark Johnson, this day could not be getting any worse. It's gone from good to bad to disastrous, but as he tries to bring it back together, meanwhile, a bit further up the road, Cy Anthony here looking for the move on the inside of Ian Manners for overall P20. It's the Porsche on the right of Anthony versus the McLaren of Manners on the left. Who's going to be the bigger on the brakes? It will be Anthony here, who's the bolder of the two, using the Porsche's braking potential, its strength, but Manners comes back here as they give one another race in room, heading up towards turn number 18. You can see how Wideboard also getting close behind, but Anthony does now have the inside in the run down towards turn number 1. The McLaren does have a little bit of a top speed advantage if they're running on fixed setups, but as they make their way into turn 1, well, Anthony there matching Manners' pace, and as they head through the corner, well, Manners will be given the elbow out there, and now it's going to be Wideboard who tries to look round the outside, but the second place AM driver here may want to reconsider his options, and indeed he backs out there as they make the way up towards turn number 5 and decides to go a little bit later here. Can he get it into the braking zone for the left-hander? He's going all in, but in the end, Manners puts the car off centre in the middle of the road and says, no, you do not, and Wyborn just respects the position of his rival and decides, okay, I've got to try and go for it a bit later. We're in, Mark Johnson and Rudy Avitzel are both into the pit lane for their scheduled stops. Johnson, I think, will definitely want a pit stop after that spin, and well, as Wyborn now tries to chase down Manners, no way through at the moment, but meanwhile looking from them to a bit further down the order, we look to Sean Gaffney, the Simulation Motorsport driver, P10 in the AM class, chasing after Casper Tunstead for P33 overall position. Well, in fact, Gaffney's going to take the place with Casper Tunstead going wide, and easy to make a mistake into turn number 1, and Tunstead showing exactly that. But as I try to settle their differences now, we look back up to Casper Brotner, and Brotner under pressure from Thomas Asphaug for P9 overall, as the Pro driver tries to hold off the Elite driver. You see the Elite Ferrari behind, thinking about the move and then deciding not to, and I think right now strategy is becoming the bigger thought process. Now, with regards to strategy, what's the right idea? Is an overcut or an undercut? Whether you're well out of position, an undercut may be worth the risk for the simple reason you've got nothing to lose if you've lost out in the start of the race, and by coming in early you can give yourself potential clear track, and therefore putting qualifying laps as close as possible to qualifying laps time and time again and gain overall race time. Meanwhile, if you're up towards the front of the field, and particularly as we look to your race leaders here, Rhys Saunders already put 1.5 seconds between himself and Damien Lobbett, but we have had Erik Røseth into the pit lane, so he's decided to go for an undercut. Then this is where it gets a little bit more challenging in terms of knowing when's the right time to pit, given the fact nobody will want to flinch. But I think Erik Røseth feels as though he's finding the right time, and as he makes way out the pit lane, where has he come out is the question. Well, he's come out P18 overall, but the bigger question is, has he got clear track? He has. Bevan Thompson's 3.5 seconds up the road. Jack Wyborn is 4 seconds behind him, so Røseth has timed this really well, and I wouldn't be surprised now if we see a potential reaction from Saunders and Damien Lobbett to cover him off, but Sidney Saunders, who will want to try and hold track position over Røseth, who, given his relative pace and the amount he's been saving his tyres behind the leaders when they were battling, Røseth right now may have the life to be able to put in some absolutely huge laps and to be able to jump into lead on strategy. But as he makes way down towards turns 8 time, we'll have to wait to see how that plays out, as we have not seen any signs of whether Saunders or Lobbett will be coming into the pit lane yet. But meanwhile, looking from elite battles that yet to come to a pro battle that is gradually unfolding on our screen. This is Alan Lever versus Alexander Tremino Mikkelsen for P7 in the pro class as they come through turn at number 13 and 14. And well, there, Tremino Mikkelsen going a little bit deep of apex of what was 13 and never losing time, losing the 10th as they come down through 15 now. And you can see Lever feeling very hooked up in the Lamborghini at the moment. Car does seem to wanting to hook itself together as he heads up towards the turn 16 hairpin. Well, right now just breaking away, and Tremino Mikkelsen being left behind as Damien Lobbett into the pit lane as I look out my commentary booth window, and Chris Kirkland interestingly into the pit lane. So the pro leaders decided to go with Lobbett. I wonder whether Kirkland feels as though he can pull off an overall top 5 alternating an overall podium. I think he's now starting to feel the dreams of reality as he's come on in from what was effectively P5 in the overall category, the lead of the pro class, and Lever into the pit lane. Will we see Tremino Mikkelsen do the same? He does. So a lot of drivers right now, I think, feeling as though the fuel tank has gone as long as it can, and they haven't got much more left. As Rhys Saunders right now stays out there, as does Ryan Moles and Peter Cox. But meanwhile, the majority of the elite class into the pit lane if they haven't already come in. And well, where is Erik Røseth in relation to Damien Lobbett? There is Røseth, and there is Damien Lobbett as the Simon Esports driver comes out behind Røseth. And well, we expected them to be in this order after the pit stops, given the way they came into the pits. But that gap between Røseth and Lobbett has now extended to 2.5 seconds. Røseth is flying right now. He is pushing the laps hard, and I think, well, the prediction from Oivan in the YouTube chat may be correct in the fact that if Rhys Saunders does not react soon or find a way to maintain a very high level of pace, Erik Røseth may get the jump on him through strategy. But as our drivers press on here into the second stint, we have still got pit stop season playing out in the pit lane for our AM class, but we also have got a couple of pit stops playing out for the pros. We've got Paul Joseph in the pit lane still at this time. They're having to do some work on the car by the looks of things. But meanwhile, as we look to a number of AM drivers making them out in the pit lane, this is Linda Dienser. He's come out ahead of, what is their, Cy Anthony, but behind Matt Edmondson. Cy Anthony says, no you don't, and goes up the inside into turn number 3 before Dienser can get his pace back together. And just behind them, Ian Manners and Casper Tunstead. Well, these two have been battling since before they came into the pit lane, and Tunstead holds off Manners in the battle for P12 in the pro class. But keep in mind, we do have quite a few pros who have yet to pit, and I do wonder right now whether they may decide to put their battling aside for a brief moment in order to try and find a way to gain on the pro drivers who've yet to pit, including what is Chris Constable and Darren Sharples in particular for them. As into the pit lane comes Charles Phillips on the pro lead, and McGregor is still out there yet to pit as well. But Casper Tunstead right now holding off Manners, and we've also got Aaron Beaver a further second behind, but Tunstead very close to the back of Dienster's car as they come through. We've got a load of smoke going up there. I believe that's a spin for somebody. In fact, that is Bevan Thompson, who's had a trip round as he brings himself back together, the privateer. And well, as he does so, an unfortunate incident there, we will potentially get a replay back of that very shortly. But Bevan Thompson trying to get himself back together. Rhys Saunders meanwhile comes out the pit lane, and as he does, looking back to the elite lead battle here, he makes way out, and look at that, there's nothing between it. Rhys Saunders comes back out ahead of Erik Røseth by 2 tenths, and right behind them Ryan Moles has also come out, and Moles has jumped up into P3. He's right on the back of this battle, but Moles has sacrificed a lot to do this as we ride on board with the ProTech Motorsport 18 driver. His pit stop time was only 12.5 seconds to the 15 of Rhys Saunders and the 14 of Erik Røseth. Now, unless Moles has done a lot of fuel saving on that opening stint, Moles will have to do some degree of fuel saving in the second stint, we reckon, in order to be able to stay on track to finish this race. Otherwise, he'll be creeping to the pit lane for a second time today. as the ProTech Motorsport driver here tucks in and embeds himself into this lead battle. They are the best part of which 1.5 seconds clear of Damien Lovett, and it's a three-way fight for the win here at the MotorLand Aragón circuit overall in the elite category as they make the way onwards towards turn number 12. But a surprise there for Moles. Røseth coming out behind Saunders wasn't quite able to make the undercut work. Saunders just covering him off, so it is going to be a battle on circuit now if Røseth wants to win this race. Not in strategy, but Moles definitely now the outsider who's brought himself right into contention for the win here as well as they make their way through turn number 15 and onwards towards 16. But heading down towards the hairpin, and as our drivers do, you can see there the top 7 coming on through, in fact top 6 and then the top 7, 8, as we also do see an interesting turn here. Giles Phillips is closing up to Chris Kirkland for the lead of the Pro Class. That gap since the pit stop has come down to 3.6 seconds. In fact, we can tell you that with regards to strategy, Phillips had 3 seconds less in the pit lane compared to Chris Kirkland in terms of stationary time. A 16.8 second stop for Kirkland, 13.8 for Phillips, and that has really manifested right now in the fact that the Phillips GP driver from the United Kingdom is closing fast, and where if he can carry this up, he may have an opportunity to go at Kirkland on the final laps of this race. Albeit Kirkland will not give in, that's a certainty, and as they make the way onwards towards another lap going on top of them, it's now lap number 17. Meanwhile, we do have some battles that still brewing further down the order, including Stuart Pearson for Slow and Steady Racing. He's P6 in the AM class, chasing after Barjut for P5 in said class. We've got a car round up the road. That's Ian Manners, I think we caught a glimpse of, who's gone round at turn 15. We're not quite sure what the story behind that is, but we know the McLaren driver is on the grass right now in what has been a bit of a surprise moment, as you can see him there in the rear of your picture. But we focus here on the 88 of Pearson as he heads down the back straight up towards turn number 16, and we're getting closer and closer to Barjut. He thinks about it here. I think he's got a little bit of the Saunders special build up in terms of trying to build up the braking zone as much as possible, but in the end Pearson deciding not to try and go for a lunge from that far back. Indeed, that would be first class mail double stamped if he was going to go from that far and make it work, and we'd have to rely on Barjut seeing it come in and open the steering for him. As meanwhile into the pit lane comes Chris Constable. In fact, it's Chris Constable into the pit lane. I believe he is into the pit lane as I look at my quarantine booth window, so his car is being serviced at the moment, but he's falling down the order with a very long pit stop at this time. But as we continue to look at Pearson versus Barjut, they make their way on to a new lap, and as they come up the hill towards turn number 5, nothing between the pair of them. But we're looking from them to another pair of AM drivers here battling for position. This is a P11 in the AM class. Matt Maddox, the pursuer, versus the defender of Simon Hartley, and the privateer versus the TU SimSport drivers. They come on through turn 16, evenly matched in terms of machinery, albeit it'll come down to the drivers and the setup on the car. And as they head onwards towards turn number 1, coming on around here on the charge, well, Maddox too far back to try and look for a move at this time, surely, as they head in towards the braking zone. Indeed, he's going to have to wait for another lap here or later on the lap. And meanwhile, we've got a battle here for P3 in the AM class. That's Tinder Dienster on the inside of Matt Edmondson. This is for the final spot of the AM podium. Edmondson is defending, and Dienster says, I'll go inside to outside and make it work. And the TU SimSport driver gains another place. Dienster is absolutely flying in the late stage of this race. Indeed, he was one to watch out for at the start, having gained a number of places. Keep in mind, he's come from P10 in the AM class on the grid to P3. Edmondson right now drops to P4 in class. He won't be too upset about that, as he's gained 4 places himself in class. And Aaron Beaver, the pro driver in the Audi R8, the American, is now going to sandwich himself in between the 2 AM drivers as they make their way into the turn 16 hairpin. But what a drive so far from Satinder Dienster, in the fact he has made so much progress over the course of time, and he's still got more progress to make. Now, could he go hunting after Neil Smith? That'll be a 5.1 second gap he's got to close down. It's not impossible, but can he make it work? And meanwhile, in other regards, well, we did have a retirement from Simon Andre Livingston, which we didn't talk about earlier on from the lead of the AM class. As Beaver, they're really trying to rinse a move into turn 1 on Dienster, but Dienster saying, no, you don't, we'll both go around if so. But we come back to the point that Livingston, Simon Andre Livingston, who was leading the AM class, has had to retire from this race due to a technical issue, and that does mean that right now your AM leader is Jack Wyborn, and Wyborn is only 2 seconds clear of Neil Smith as they head in towards turn number 7. And here are 2 drivers who are very familiar with one another. You may remember Neil Smith battling with Wyborn at Fuji, and indeed Smith at one point leading ahead of Wyborn and thinking he was on course for the win in the race, and in the end was on course for a podium until he had the difficulty at turn number 13 at Fuji. In fact, turn number 11 at Fuji, where he was sent round by another driver, and that led to the disaster-prone racing driver being deprived of a podium. But as he heads on round right now, definitely building up momentum here is Smith, and I think looking for that potential win, albeit the gap between Wyborn has stabilised at 2 seconds for now. We'll have to wait and see if that's how it's going to stand in the long term. But as he comes on through at turn number 13, meanwhile, we do look from our AM drivers charging on to two pro drivers here in the form of Alexander Tremino-Mikkelsen, who is being chased by the similarly coloured Darren Sharples, as we do see the Racing Lab Esports AM car holding off the UK SimRacing machine for the time being. As they head up the hill through 17 into 18. Well, right now for Tremino-Mikkelsen, definitely under prime pressure here with under 10 minutes to go and the MotorLand Aragón circuit as they charge towards turn number 1. We can see the number 6 driver here doing everything right thus far, but the problem is now in those late stages, this is where tyre wear starts to tell. Also, tiredness also kicks in. It may only be a 45-minute race, but given the number of corners around this circuit, the number of direction changes and varied braking zones of trail braking and heavy braking, this is perhaps one of the most physically demanding circuits out of our sprint race rounds of the season, and therefore our drivers will be feeling it as they press on. But as they do, you see up there pulling aside, respecting the blue flags, Ridley Witsland, the P18 Pro driver, letting the battle for P6 Pro class go on through, and Kerry Kokorin, the next driver, up P17 in the Pro class. But then again, and Lever right now, only what is 1 second up the road, and I wonder if Lever feels though he's being pulled in to this fight as Tremino-Mikkelsen, and what is their Sharples make the way on the inside of Kokorin through turn 9 into 10. Not ideal for Sharples. He's going to lose out some momentum here coming through turn number 10, and therefore will have to back things off. But meanwhile, we had a bit of an incident up the road, and I believe, oh goodness me, what on earth has happened to Peter Cox? I think he's lost himself there on the grass. I'm not quite sure where that is, but it's gone wrong for Peter Cox, and Joe Newman's been also involved in an incident just beforehand. And we take a look back at what exactly happened for the two drivers. Well, this was Joe Newman making his way into turns 14 and 15. The Lamborghini coming downhill here on the direction change. Takes a bit of apex curb and coming into 15. The rear of the car lets go. Now, Peter Cox comes into the scene in the instant as he does. Gets the power on, and the rear tyre, the rear right, as he tries to get the power down, goes to the gravel. So as Newman recovers, Peter Cox goes all the way around for UKSimRacing Clark. An unfortunate moment there, but both drivers just getting a little bit too aggressive with their approaches to the corners when the cars need a little bit more of a tactical approach. But as we return to line pictures now, the elite drivers still then. Joe Newman P5 in the elite class, Peter Cox down to P7 in the elite class now, moves in one place to Thomas Asbaug. But as we look to the elite class, we look to the front of it. Indeed, here is the battle for the lead over on in the elite class, which is going to the wire between Saunders, Røseth and Moles. And well, right now, Saunders still leading for Team Year 1. The 64 driver keeping Røseth at bay by 7 tenths. Røseth, meanwhile, not making as much ground as we perhaps expected since the start of the second stint. But as he comes on through turns 10 and 11, I think Røseth's just starting to tee up what will be a move in the final 5 laps. Well, indeed, the final 5 minutes, I should say, but we have got about 5 laps remaining here, given the lap time is 2 minutes. In fact, we will have this lap plus another 3, so we've got 3 laps remaining after this one. And as they come down through turn 14 into 15, more behind him at Ryan Moles, the driver who we reckon will need to do some fuel saving in order to get across the line, given the short duration of his pit stop. But then again, if Moles was able to save a large amount of fuel on his first stint, then right now Moles could really be making a masterclass piece of strategy come to life as he makes his way up towards turn at number 12. They've all got Paul Joseph to clear, who stays aside there. As you can see, Moles flashes lights to say to Cliss, look, I'm coming all the way out the inside from far back, expect it to come. And as they make their way onto the braking it, all 3 drivers make their way on through, and well, nothing between them. But meanwhile, we look back to Sharples versus Tremino-Mikkelsen as we ride on board here in the battle for P6 of the Pro class, and they've got Alan Lever right in front of them as well. So it's a three-way fight for P5, and Sharples, I think, has himself set in terms of his pace to be that P5 driver if he can pick his way past the Racing Lab Esports AM car. But as they head down the back straight and up towards turn number 16, no way through at the moment. As they head in towards the braking zone and further down the field whilst we ride on board with this, we are hearing that Matt Edmondson's had a major off track, which has seen him drop from P4 in the AM class down to P7 in the AM class. Unfortunate for the number 176 car, but still the Ferrari driver has had plenty of positives from today that he'll take forward into next week. But as we continue to look back to this battle here for P5 in the Pro class, with Sharples there not having the best of runs out of the final corner complex, and indeed Tremino-Mikkelsen being given an opportunity to go hunting after and Lever as they come through turn 1 into 2. go through the right-hander and up towards 3-4. Onto the brakes very shortly for turn number 5, and Sharples here inching closer now as the victory of McCallum being impeded to a degree by the dirty air off of the back of Lever's car. You can see Sharples here feels a lot more comfortable running in that negative downforce view of that dirty air, which works on the downforce of the car as they come in towards turn number 7. But there, Trina McCallum goes a bit deep at the brake, and Sharples says, okay, I'm going all in. And as they come through, his elbows out there between Sharples and Trina McCallum, and I think trying to give one another space. But as they come down into the braking zone, Sharples will not be too pleased with that whatsoever. And in terms of the fact he was elbowed aside, well, the places stay as they were. But Sharples definitely showing the pace, and Trina McCallum there being caught blinded, I think, by the fact he's having to negotiate Simon Hartley, the MP12 driver, who was letting the drivers on through. And as they make their way out towards turn number 12, well, this battle right now, I think, will only turn up in terms of the calibre of the heat as they head on towards the next lap. But meanwhile, Alan Lever feeling quite comfortable right now to hold position as they come down towards what is turns 14 and 15. The UKSimRacing Price driver struggling through these tighter sequences in the Lamborghini compared to the Porsche. You can definitely see that pronounced difference in the speed through the corner complexes. And Lever here under pressure now from Trina McCallum in the run down the back straight, where it's going to be the battle of the Lamborghini versus the Porsche, where the Lamborghini running the Audi V10 engine in the back of it. And as they come out towards turn 16, McCallum on the inside there under braking. He's on the right, you picture Lever on the left. Well, Lever's going to try and outbrake the Porsche, but he's going to go very deep in consequence. And with that, oh goodness me, and Sharples gets it wrong, just takes a bit too much apex coming. You can see the rear left tyre dropped off of what was the raised curbing, and as a result, the UKSimRacing Price driver has lost P7 in class to Matt Strand, who's coming through. And as they make their way onwards towards turn 1 onto lap number 22 of racing here, well, right now Sharples losing out when he meant to gain, and meanwhile Matt Strand gaining when he was just observing. But as they head in towards 2, 3, 4, well, it's all kicking off here in the battle for the final spots inside what is the top 5 of the Pro class. But looking from them to a bit further down the order, Steinar Sani, who had that absolutely difficult qualifying session. He's P6 in the AM class. He's still trying to make some headway as well, as he looks now to try and gain P5 in the AM class over the back of Thomas Barjuk. But right now Sani not close enough to think about the move, and time is running out. He goes on to another lap, but after this one there'll be only one more to go. We will get a 23rd lap of racing here today, and well, to put proof on that, here is Rhys Saunders. The elite leader has broken away from Erik Røseth and Ryan Moles. Now, has Saunders got enough fuel? That's the question that some of you do have in the YouTube chat. I get the feeling that Saunders will have enough fuel here. He won't have gambled in terms of underfueling the car, given the fact he's come out in the lead position. Otherwise, we would see him closer to Røseth as he comes on through turn number 16. But Moles and Røseth right now very close together. And Ryan Moles, if he's able to keep his pace up, I mean, if he goes to the move on the final lap, it will be a huge strategic gamble that has worked out and paid dividends in the number 18 car from ProTech. But as they make their way on to the final lap, white flags out, ladies and gentlemen. One more lap to go. It's Rhys Saunders who leads by 2 seconds over Erik Røseth, with Røseth only in return 4 seconds clear of Ryan Moles, if that, and Damien Lobbit P4. Meanwhile, in the Pro class, it's Chris Kirkland, who right now has a 5.5 second gap to Giles Phillips, and Giles Phillips trying to close down versus Kirkland, but Kirkland is managing that gap at a very controlled rate of knots as he comes out of turn 3 on towards 4 and 5, and the downforce racing driver on course for his first win of the season, and what's been an absolutely brilliant turn of pace. Meanwhile, in the AM class, here's Jack Wyborn, the TPA racing driver. And well, after the unfortunate retirement of Seaman Andre Livingston from the lead, the race, Wyborn has picked up the torch, and well, he's on course right now not to make it 3 second places in a row, but to make it a first win of the season. Albeit I say that, we don't want to put the commentator's curse on him, and the TPA racing driver's got one more lap to go before it's all said and done. But meanwhile, we look here to the battle for P5 in the AM class between Barjuk and Sani. Sani pulls to the inside on the right. Your picture, Barjuk's on the left. It's going to be the battle of the brakes. The Porsche will have the brakes, but the BMW's got the authority in the inside into the turn 16 hairpin. Sani goes a bit deep. He forces Barjuk to go even deeper, and Sani gets the move done. The Norwegian there playing it smart on the brakes and making sure that Barjuk could not cut him back. And as they make their way out the final corner onto one more lap of racing. Here they go, ladies and gentlemen. But meanwhile, it's going to be Barjuk who tries to come back. Sani defends to the middle of the road, and as they come into left hand, Sani takes position and confirms it. But as they come out of turn 1 on towards 2, meanwhile, we do look from them back to your race leaders, and here is Rhys Saunders from Team Year 1, and right now fully in control of this race as he comes on through the hairpin for the final time. Behind him, Røseth and Moles together, but the problem is there's not going to to be a way through for them as Rhys Saunders comes to the line. It's going to be his first win of the season, and what a way to do it for Team Year 1 as he crosses the line. Your elite and overall winner ahead of Erik Røseth P2, Ryan Moles P3, and a brilliant strategic masterclass there for Moles, and Damien Lovitt missed out on the podium P4 for Simna Esports ahead of Chris Kirkland, who takes his first pro win of the season, P5 overall for Downforce Racing, ahead of Giles Phillips, second place in the pro class, P6 overall, and a great drive for the Phillips GP driver ahead of Joe Newman, and then it will be Thomas Attal P8, Casper Bronto completes the pro podium there for Old Dudes in Cars P9, and it'll be Aaron McGregor who completes the top 10. His run of wins coming to an early end, but the ProTech Motorsport driver 9, it's good points on the board. Pete Scott's P11 best race ahead of Ryan Walker P12, and then we will have Alexander Tremino McCalson holding on to P5 in the pro class at the finish, and a Matt Strand P6 who've got the move on Darren Sharples in the final lap, and Lever P8 in the pro class behind P16, and then Cy Anthony will shortly come through ahead of Daniel Pays to complete his race, a P17 overall, P9 in the elite class as he crosses the line there, and then we have Daniel Pays who comes through in the rear of your picture there, P9 in pro class, but then Jack Wybon comes to the line for his first AM win of the season for TPA Racing. He lost it at Fuji, he missed it at Jerez, but he's made it count today. Neil Smith takes another AM podium for Disaster Prone Racing, P2 in class, P20 overall ahead of Aaron Beaver, and then it will be Bevan Thompson ahead of Satinder Dinsa, who with a third place finish in the AM class picks up his best performance so far in his UKSimRacing GT3 League history career. But the Tiki Sim Sport Tower driver absolutely flying on pace today and gaining 7 places along the way. Lewis Payne P24 ahead of Stuart Pearson, and then we will see Steinar Sani P5 there in the AM class, making a great drive to recover after a dismal qualifying session. Tom Barjac P6 in the AM class, P28 overall ahead of Stephen Parker Hamilton, who we see here for TPA Racing, and a difficult day of racing for the number 66 car. Matt Edmondson completes the run to P30 overall, P80 AM class. Chris Constable and Sean Gaffney have already come through for P31, P32, and then Rob Armstrong will be your final finisher on the lead lap, ladies and gentlemen. P15 Pro, P33 overall in a difficult race for the Mercedes cars, and for UKSimRacing Moss's driver, definitely a frustrating race, and we can understand why it just did not go his way today. But as our drivers all cool themselves down now and just gradually bring it back to the pits, and we see Erik Røseth doing so. Most of the drivers already made the way in to the pit lane, but those who have not will just cooling down as much as they can. It's been a tough race indeed, an absolutely stamina draining race here at the Circuito de Alcañiz or the MotorLand Aragón circuit, depending on your preference of the nomenclature. And as the Norwegian comes on in, he'll know that he's missed out on a win today, but still a second place will keep him firmly in the lead of the Elite Championship going into round number 4. And that's what matters most, we should say, in the fact getting the points when you need them. As he heads into the pit lane, we do look to the scenic view, ladies and gentlemen, and it is time for us to present you those race results, and we start off with the overall. So after 45 minutes of racing here today at the Circuito de Alcañiz or MotorLand Aragón in Spain, in round number 3 of the UKSimRacing GT3 League Season 11 as brought to you on iRacing, Rhys Saunders taking his first overall win of the season for Team Year 1, 2.1 seconds clear of Erik Røseth of Racing Lab Esports AM. Third place went to Ryan Moles to complete the elite and overall podium for ProTech Motorsport, with the ProTech Motorsport driver making a huge strategic gamble that worked out by essentially pitting for less time compared to everybody else, and in the end it was enough fuel to get to the end of the race. And I think whatever fuel saving he did on the first stint and in that second stint, definitely a well-deserved third place. Damien Lovitt P4 for Symphony Esports, unfortunately missed out on a podium, and also will be looking back, I suspect, after the race at what happened between himself and Rhys Saunders at turn at number 5 in the early stages, which saw him drop down to P4. But still great pace shown from the 666 driver, and he'll know that his win is coming one day this season. And then Chris Kirtland P5 overall, but more importantly for the Downforce Racing driver, his first win at the Pro Class this season, and what a way to do it in style. Having qualified on what was the front 2 rows of the grid, not quite able to finish on the podium overall, but still a top 5 overall to go with that Pro win is no mean feat. He finished what was the best part of 7 seconds clear of Giles Phillips of Phillips GP, run up in the Pro Class, and a deserved drive there there for the Ferrari driver, and definitely showing his championship campaign coming alive, with Joe Newman P7 there for Empire Motorsport, having some difficulty midway through the race and just cost him an opportunity, potential overall top 5, but still 5th place in the elite class, and therefore the 97 driver will be pleased with that, and the team will be, given the fact he was the only driver representing them today. Thomas Aspel, P8 there for Racing Lab Esports AM2, a solid recovery drive through the field, having started well outside the top 10, with Casper Brotner and Aaron McGregor completing your top 10, the two pro drivers, and for the Old Dudes in Cars driver of Brotner, a special significance in the fact it was 3rd place and therefore on the podium in the pro class. McGregor, seeing his run of wins ended today, albeit he won't complain too much. The ProTech Motorsport driver, 4th place, will give him great points going into the next round, but we can definitely see now that the Pro Championship is well and truly alive. If you were ever concerned about McGregor potentially running away with it, well, he's definitely not running away with it based on the results from today. But again, a very different circuit compared to our first 2 rounds, so what comes next week, we may see McGregor return to the top step, you never know. And then Besseres, P11, Peter Cox there for UKSimRacing Clark, in what was a reasonable race today from the 68 driver, but definitely not quite on the pace compared to some of his peers. Now, for the remainder of the overall results, we will be focusing on podium finishers, and therefore we will be coming down to our AM podium finishers, including what is Jack Wybon, P19 overall, but with that, seeing his first AM win of the season for TPA Racing on the 3rd time of trying, and he'll be absolutely chuffed with that, no longer missed the 2nd place, with Neil Smith for Disaster Prone Racing, bringing home P2 just behind by 4 seconds, and then you have to look to P23 to Satinda Dinsa, who in, what is that, P23 position for Tiki Sport Tower, bringing on home the 3rd spot on the AM podium in a drive from P10 in the AM class and well outside the top 30, and what a drive it was from the number 10 driver. He'll be pleased with that, and Tiki Sport will be absolutely ecstatic. Lewis Payne and Stuart Pearson completing your top 25, and as we do look down towards the retirees from the race and those who did not finish on the lead lap, the top 33 finishing on the lead lap, including all the way down to Rob Armstrong in P33 for UKSimRacing Moss, and then finishing a lap down, his sister teams drive from UKSimRacing Clark and Mark Johnson, also James Connolly, Kerry Kokoran, Rudy Avitzland, Matt Maddox, and then Simon Hartley and Ian Maz to complete your top 40. Then finishing 2 laps down, Simon Andre Livingston with their unfortunate technical issue, seeing him lose out on the opportunity of a win. But great to see he still finished the race and therefore brought the car home ahead of Paul Joseph Glist. And then we can see our 3, in fact, I think it's our 3 retirees of Ricky Pink for Aspire Racing Team, Sam Sherwood for ProTech Motorsport, and Sander Rusted for Team Norway Racing. Unfortunately, not to see Rusted be able to take to the grid, a technical issue with the car preventing him from qualifying and also going racing. And then the retirements for Ricky Pink and Sam Sherwood will lead to them being classified as non-finishers, as they did not complete half the race distance. Now, going on to the individual classes, this is where all the points are. We can see, starting with the elite class, Rhys Saunders taking the win for Team Year 1 by 2.1 seconds, and a further half second clear of Ryan Moles. But the trio there in an absolutely brilliant battle in the second stint of the race. But again, to Damien Lobbit in P4, the Symphony Esports driver feels as though he should have been inside that battle, but an unfortunate bit of contact early on, what we believe was contact, whether it was physical or netcode contact, but it did look as though there Damien Lobbit losing out to a degree, and therefore now he's got to wait another round to try and take his first victory of the season. Joe Newman P5 for Empire Motorsport there, finishing 14 seconds behind the top 4, but still leading essentially the best of the rest status there, with Thomas Aspel a further, what was, 6 tenths behind for Racing Lab Esports AM2, and definitely charging on for a P5 if there was a couple more laps available. Peter Cox, Ryan Walker, Cy Anthony, and Sam Sherwood rounded off your standings, with Sam Sherwood being the sole elite retiree, and a difficult race today for Cy Anthony, having started from towards the back of the field, the Symphony Esports driver, and to battle his way through and not quite able to make elite places in the end. Then coming on to the pro class, and we can see here, it was, in fact, as we do there get our Pro Class standings updated, we do apologise, for some reason we can't see at P1, but we will be able to very shortly, and in fact, we're still not allowed to see at P1, as we do try to bring you P1 on screen now, ladies and gents, but the technical issues always there, decide to rear their ugly head, but we can see confirmation of Chris Kirkland taking the win for Downforce Racing by 6.7 seconds ahead of Phillips GP's Giles Phillips, and will Kirkland in a class of his own today, and will much like Aaron McGregor was in his class of his own at Fuji, Kirkland has shown he seems to be the master of Aragon, at least in the pro class this season. And Giles Phillips there in a great P2 finish and getting some major points on the board ahead of Casper Brotner for Old Dudes in Cars, who have a 3rd place finish. He'll be absolutely chuffed with that, and 9. It's his first podium of the season, and he earned it by a 4-second advantage over Aaron McGregor, who the Protect Motorsport driver, battling his way through the order and fighting to a P4 finish and some good points on the board. Alexander Tremino-Mikkelsen coming home with the final top 5 spot for Racing Lab Esports AM, ahead of teammate from the sister team of AM3 of Matt Strand, with Tremino-Mikkelsen having to fight hard for that position, ahead of Strand, Darren Sharples and Anne Lever. They completed the run to P8, and then Daniel Pace and Aaron Beaver finishing off your top 10 there, with the privateer fighting through to P10 just ahead of Bevan Thompson. Bevan Thompson was best of rest P11 ahead of Lewis Payne, with Casper Tunstead, Chris Constable and Rob Armstrong completing your top 15, and all the pro drivers who finished on the lead lap. Then finishing a lap down at Mark Johnson ahead of Kerry Kokoran, with Rudy Avitsland finishing P18 ahead of Ian Manners, and Ian Manners on his debut. An unfortunate spin midway through the racing, the 52 racing driver lose all his progress and finishing last of our pro drivers today. And then lastly, coming on to the AM class, we can see confirmation Jack Wyborn taking his first win of the season in the AM class by 3.8 seconds over Neil Smith, and the TPA racing driver may have benefited from Simon Andre Livingston's unfortunate technical issues on the car, and he was able to get the car out, albeit 2 laps down at the end. But still, for the TPA racing driver in the 62, he had to be in the right place at the right time and had to keep the car on the tarmac, and that's exactly what he was able to do. Neil Smith and another solid performance, finishing P2 there. His first win of the season will come. I think the team will be feeling at the moment as he continues to build pace. And Satinder Deensa, perhaps the drive of the day in the AM and also overall. The Tiki SimSport Toa driver absolutely delivering and fighting his way from P10 in the AM class on the grid and charging through to a P3 finish there. 3 seconds behind him, Stuart Pearson in another great drive of the day for the Silent Steady racing driver, fighting his way through in the number 88 car ahead of Racing Lab Esports AM2's Steinar Sani, who had started well down the order, did well to fight through to P5 and will now be falling behind Jack Wyborn in the championship standings, but 9, he hasn't lost as much ground as he may have if he'd finished further back. Thomas Barger, Stephen Park Hamilton, Matt Edmondson, Sean Gaffney and James Connie completed your top 10, with Matt Edmondson there on course for a top 5 until a late spin that saw him lose out and finish P8, and James Connie having a difficult day today for UKSimRacing Moss and finishing a lap down in the end, but still some points accrued for the number 46 driver. Also finishing lap down, Matt Maddox, who was best of the rest, ahead of Simon Hartley, with 2 laps down for Simon Andre Livingston and Paul Joseph Clist. And then your 2 retirees in the AM class of Ricky Pink, the Aspire Racing Team driver, who retired 3 laps into the race, and Sander Roosted, who was not able to get out on circuit today in qualifying or the race. And we hope to see the Team Norway racing driver out on circuit in the next round in a week's time. But those are the race results, ladies and gentlemen. And well, that concludes all of our racing today here in Spain, and the conclusion of our Spanish doubleheader in the early stage of the season. But it's not the conclusion of the broadcast, however, because in 10 to 15 minutes' time, we'll be back for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. And with it being such a draining race here today at MotorLand Aragón, and also the first time that the series has visited the Spanish circuit, well, let's hear what our drivers have got to say all about it and more. And we'll hear all of that and more in approximately 10 minutes' time. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for us to conduct our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. And today, as you may have noticed, there is an AM theme to our interviews. In the fact, we're going to be hearing from our 3 podium finishers in the AM class, as they've all achieved something special today. Whether it's Wybon from TPA Racing picking up his first win of the season, Neil Smith making the recovery to the podium, or Satinder Deensa bringing home his first podium of the season and his UK sim racing history. Well, they've all got a story to tell, and then we'll be hearing from Rhys Saunders in the elite class of team year 1 on his victory at the front of the field. But we go straight into it then as Jack Wybon joins me now in the interview room. Jack, you probably can't believe it's finally happened. You were missed the second place of rounds 1 and 2, but on the third time of trying, you've made it happen at MotorLand Aragón. You've taken it your first AM class win. How do you feel?
Oh, that was hard work. And quite fortunate, to be honest, because I'd never have caught Livingston at all if it weren't for his disconnection issues. But yeah, happy that I was still on the track, not finishing second again.
Well, dear, it's been some time coming, and like you say, some fortune coming along the way. But as we look back to the formation that currently on our broadcast screens, qualifying was so critical here at Aragón today, and we saw yourself putting it P2 on the AM class grid, P24 overall. How was qualifying for you, given the gulf of lap time between yourself and the field, and then Simon Andre Livingston's pole lap?
It was quite daunting when I joined in and see his time popped up. I was like, I'm getting nowhere near that. And I've only been doing 59s, high 58s all weekend practicing for this on the VRS series. And yeah, when I see that, I was like, oh crap, here we go. We're going to get loads of us in between. But yeah, fortunately, I managed to pick out a lap, which put me P2. So it was quite nice, and just beat my teammate, which was even better feeling.
Well, it's a great feeling to be right up then. Also, when you do beat your teammate, it's a little bit of bragging rights, if you will. And just also on the fact, you were P2 in an AM qualifying grid, and let's put this in perspective for the viewers at home. You were 1.1 seconds off of Livingston's pole lap, and then from yourself all the way down to what was Steinar Sani in P13, it was 7 tenths between 12 of you, and you're at the front of that pack. That must have made you think, you know what, I've done something special.
Yeah. It's definitely a good feeling to know that, yeah, I've managed to do that and because it was so close between everyone, that it was just mental. I said to my teammate before that when we was in the practice session, there was only like 5 tenths covering 8 of us at one stage before everyone started putting more quali laps in towards the end of the session. But yeah, 8 tenths between that is just like one mistake and you're going to be more in the pack where you really don't want to be around this sort of track, especially with the layout at the start of this. It'll catch you out quite easily.
And speaking of being caught out at the start, when we did go green flag racing, we saw a relatively cool and collected start from yourself. What was your goal in this race, given the fact you were really leading the field, and then there was a chase after a driver who was quite a way away?
It was more just at first to keep second. Like, well, William Stevens' game plan was to keep second and third and sort of try and make our way through the pros up to Livingston if we could. But yeah, it was just more to just keep it on the track and not let anyone sort of through or give them a chance to sort of send it up the inside. Like just keeping all the lines sort of blocked and yeah, just making sure that we don't lose any places and get dragged into a fight that we don't really want to be in when we want to be moving forward.
And it seemed to work well, albeit unfortunately for your teammate, a bit of an early instance saw your teammate Stephen drop further down the order and have to start to make a recovery drive. But focusing on yourself, after the opening couple of laps, we very quickly saw the battling in the field settle down, and it looked as though then you're having a couple of squabbles with pro drivers around you, but otherwise just having to protect the car.
Yeah, I sort of got into a nice gap. I had like a second and a half in front to a pro driver and then like a couple of seconds behind to one, so I was sort of in a nice little gap, so I just sort of try to keep the pace and just stay in that. I didn't really want to catch the pro driver and start battling to give Neil a chance to close up and risk getting undercut or undercut in the pit stops either. So sort of just try and play the long game and just make sure that you're sort of covered from every angle, really.
And just on that coverage, and particularly when we're talking about Neil, for the guys and girls tuning at home, Neil Smith, who was runner-up in the AM Class Day. Yourself and Neil have had a bit of history this season with your close battle at Fuji for the win, and also battling to a lesser degree perhaps at Jerez, but the two of you seem to be very close on pace. When you took over the lead of this race with Linston having that unfortunate technical issue, I bet it started to turn a little bit more, okay, I can't let him win this.
Yeah, it was, and when I was in obviously a chat with my teammate, and I had a couple when it came up that I realised I was first. I was like, I made about 4 mistakes through that lap, and the gap dropped from like 4 seconds to like 1 second, and I was like, okay, right, I need to concentrate now and actually push on here and get the gap back, because if not, I'm going to end up losing this win as well as the first two.
And just on that, with regards to when the race changed, did it change your approach to strategy at all, or did you go with the strategy that you already had planned?
No, I stuck with what my plan was always to go as long as I physically could, and then just not take tyres and just keep the pit stop as short as possible, and just sort of hope that like people aren't taking tyres and managing to undercut me, sort of thing, if they're pitted really early and getting space. But luckily, I was quite fortunate not to really get caught up in battles with people. I had one little moment with a Ty and a pro driver when they both spun at turn 14, I think it is, before the back straight, but managed to sort of navigate that without getting any damage. And yeah, just kept to my run plan really, which was just to run long and just keep it on the track really.
And that plan did work out, and come the second stint, time was turning down. Smith, to be fair, did try and put in some solid laps to counter you, but it looked as though for every lap he could set, you could match him.
Yeah, when I just sort of kept my eye on the gap and it was sort of staying the same. So the thing I realised I was quite fast in the last sector, or the middle part of that before the back straight. So I was sort of pulling it back through there and sort of losing it. Obviously, that BMW's got a bit more power down the straights than the Porsche. But yeah, through the fast corners and that, my karting was really planted. So I was able just to eke it out there when he was catching me in the first part of the lap.
It worked out nicely for yourself in terms of balancing the race, and also at the same time knowing where you're stronger and where you're potentially weaker than Smith. And then coming out the final quarter of the final lap, just take us through that feeling picking up your first win of the season.
It was a very different feeling to what I've had this season, as the first 2 races have been races that I've lost out on, where that was just like I've run the plan, it worked, and yeah, it was just relief really. I finally got the win.
Well, that relief will feel satisfactory, and with that result, it does mean now you are the AM Championship leader going into round number 4 at Virginia International Raceway. Speaking of which, how are you feeling for the final round of the first half of the season?
I've not really done that many laps of Virginia yet, but I'll jump on and do the VRS series, which are there all week, like I have done for this track really. I didn't actually own this track till Wednesday, so but I do actually own this one, so I can hopefully get a few more laps in, and yeah, pick up. It's quite a nice track. I think there's quite a few places where you're gonna be able to just drop the car over the hills and that through the first sector. But yeah, hopefully the car will stay planted. The setup will be nice to keep it all going forward still.
Well, we do look forward to seeing how you get on in the state of Virginia in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, Jack, is there anybody you'd like to give a thank you or a special mention to live on the broadcast today?
Well, I will give a shout out to my teammate, because I suppose he got give me the motivation to win after he binned it. So that was quite a nice feeling to win the race for him that he wanted so badly.
Well, sorry, go on.
But yeah, other than that, no, not really. That's about it, really. I'd say something about him, so.
Well, that's fair play, Jack. I'm sure Stephen will appreciate it. But with that, thank you for joining me in the interview room. Congratulations on picking up your first win of the season in the AM class. And well, could we see another in a week's time? Only time will tell. But until then, have a fantastic rest of your evening.
Thank you very much, mate. Take care. Bye.
So hearing there from Jack Wyborn, the AM driver, you can hear it in his voice. It's been a long time coming, I think, in his mind, and he's finally been able to achieve the result he wanted, which is that win that's been denied from him for the first 2 rounds of the season, but not today, and dedicated the win in honour of his teammate Stephen Parker Hamilton, who had a difficult day by comparison. A very sweet and fitting gesture, but what a race from Wyborn, in the fact of really focusing on battling for P2 at first, and that qualifying session, which saw him at top of field of 12 drivers separated by what was 7 to 8 tenths at the end. But the key thing about it was this wasn't for pole, it was for the right to be the best of the rest behind pole, and in the end, well, being in that position at the right time in the race when it went wrong for Simon Andre Livingston was what Wyborn needed in order to take over the lead. And then, well, it wasn't just straightforward with the fact Neil Smith was constantly chasing him, as you do see the two of them sharing a camera shot briefly there with Smith off in the distance but always looming. But Wyborn able to keep it together and piece together the last elements of consistency and pace in order to bring home the race. And well, can he make it 2 wins out of 2 in round number 4? We'll have to wait and see. But I think right now, Wyborn as your championship leader will not want to let that go any time soon. But as we now come on to our next interview of this evening, we'll very shortly be hearing from Neil Smith, the BMW M4 driver from Disaster Prone Racing, who as well has had an absolutely fantastic day in the racing cockpit, in the fact, whilst he didn't bring home the win, he was able to battle his way through from very far down the order to P7 in the AM class, up to P2 in the end. And well, as we get ready to hear his perspective very shortly, I think it's also going to be a joyous occasion for him, albeit he joins me now in the interview room. Neil, wasn't quite perhaps the win today, but still a second place in class after starting at P7 in class in a qualifying session which could not have been closer. Feels like a great achievement?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I had no idea what was second. I was just pushing as hard as I could go, really. But no, I had to be told, oh, P2, that's great. I was like, wait, what? But no, yeah, I was quite pleased with that once I'd realised.
Now, with that in mind, and dialing it back to qualifying this time around has perhaps been the closest we've seen all season, albeit if we exclude the anomalous pole lap, if you will, from Livingston. I'm going to use that given the fact the trend of qualifying in the AM class, 7 attempts separating 12 drivers from P2 to P13, and you found yourself P7 in that group. How did qualifying go for you, and how did you feel about where you ended up?
Honestly, that was a PB lap for me at the time, so I was pretty happy with it. And then I saw, as we mentioned, we saw the anomaly lap, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe that's not as good as I think it is. But then, as you mentioned, it was a very, very tight midfield. So to be honest, very happy with the overall lap. You know, as I say, it's the best I'd managed up to that point, so I was pleased, and it seemed solid pace for maintaining that through the race.
So going from qualifying into the race, we saw with the start and everyone charging into turn number 1, looked very tight there, but you had a good number of AM drivers around you as we went green flag racing. What was your focus for the opening laps?
Honestly, with my misfortunes in the first couple of rounds, it was just keep it in one piece, keep it in the track. Not necessarily a major concern if I lose a track position or two, but you know, push as hard as I can while keeping everything together. That was basically my entire game.
Well, sensible approach. And as the race evolved, we saw quite early on yourself chasing down Jack Wyborn, albeit the two of you at the time really focusing more and more on battling for what would become P2. And then suddenly Livingston has to come into the pits with a technical issue with the car. You're battling for the win now. How does that change the complexion of your race?
Well, as soon as I saw that Jack was in the distance, I'm like, hang on a minute. I'm not as far behind as I thought I am. As soon as I noticed where Jack was and I could see that there was a couple of pros between myself and him, I'm like, I know I'm faster than these. I've overtook them, you know, in previous races. I'm a similar, if not slightly faster pace on a good lap. So I basically started gunning it from that point, which, in fairness, did cause a few extra mistakes. But when it worked, I cut a good few seconds out of the times.
And with that push, we have seen at this circuit today, the Porsche 992 does seem to be the car that works very well, particularly with this circuit being so technical. But the BMW was made to work very well by yourself. Where do you feel as though you were gaining the time in the BMW?
Definitely anywhere I could keep my foot down. I found it quite challenging, especially as the fuel load lightened, keep the back end from going light. It was just difficult to get that traction down because, you know, by this point I'm pushing, so I'm constantly trying to feather to find that sweet spot as the fuel burns off, and you lose all that weight pressing your rear tires into the track.
That makes sense. And speaking of fuel and also tyres, with regards to strategy, did you go with the strategy you originally designed to go with, or did you have to modify it given that track position and clear space would be so pivotal around here?
Yeah, so I originally was just going to go until the last lap because I was basically thinking I'll match Jack because as I saw him in the distance, but then I thought I'm catching these pros. I've been stuck behind a couple of either lapped cars or pro drivers at some point earlier in the race. So I did cut in earlier, hoped for an undercut, but then when I got in, I had a few seconds of repairs from a tap that I'd received in one of the melees. It was like 5 seconds, so it wasn't anything major, but I thought, well, that might have put a damper on that one. But yeah, so I came in a lap earlier than I was planning to, just to see if I could make any difference there.
Well, it was unfortunate you did have the small tap which you had to repair, but still going with a clean car gave you all cylinders all firing, if you will, to go into that final stint. And in making the chase all the way through the closing 15 minutes, we did see you put in some phenomenal laps, but it seemed as though for every lap you could deliver, Wyborn was able to land a blow back, if you will, using a bit of boxing terminology. I have to ask, was there a point where you decided, you know what, it's time to settle for P2, or did you think, you know what, I'm just going to chase him and see if something happens right at the end of the race?
Honestly, I was gunning it until the very last lap, and I basically said at that point, look, unless he makes a major mistake and slides off the track, I'm not catching 3 seconds in the last couple of laps. But yeah, it was one of those, one lap I'd gain a second, the next lap he'd gain half a second, so it was one of those we were constantly trading one small mistake for another small mistake, and I never really made the progress I was aiming for, apart from one lap where I caught him up by 3 or 4 seconds while we were both evading drama that was occurring in front of us.
We did hear the perspective from Jack moments ago about that particular lap where a couple of mistakes also entered it, and we did see that gap really come on down. But it's great to see a rivalry between the two of you that's building more and more as the season goes on. And well, I have to ask, with the fact you picked up another great result today, and despite your misfortunes early in the season, it does mean now that you find yourself in what is P3 in the AM class. How are you feeling for VIR next week, as it's the end of the first half of the season and you seem to be in your ascendancy?
I'm hopeful, but I haven't raced VIR since I was in the Skippies, so it's been a while. It's going to be another learning curve, but then again, I haven't actually owned any of the first 3 tracks we've raced before now either. So I'm going to do what I can, get some practice laps in, and just hope for the best, really.
Well, we do look forward to seeing how you get on in the US of A next week. But just before we do let you go, Neil, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on air tonight?
Well, first I'll give Damien a shout out. He gave me a kicking to point out the fundamental things I need to work on, which is always helpful. You know, somebody who is significantly faster than you can see these things a mile away. And it's one of those, you're so busy focusing on something else that you never actually notice what you're doing until it's too late. So shout out to Damien for giving me spending some of his time to give me a few pointers, and of course to yourself for another excellent broadcast, I'm sure.
Well, Neil, it's been a pleasure to have you join me in the interview room. Congratulations once again on your second place finish in class and P20 overall today. And what is definitely looking to be a season that's coming alive for yourself. We hope that may continue in VIR in a week's time. But until then, have a fantastic evening and enjoy the rest.
Thank you very much.
So here and there from Neil Smith from Disaster Prone Racing, and well, in his own words there, the battling in qualifying, setting a personal best and then realising just how staggeringly close it was between essentially P2 through to P13. And again, when we talk about Simon Andre Livingston's lap being anomalous, it just goes to show you the calibre of the lap he pulled out, and then the rest of the field, how close they are, and that can happen over the course of the field. But again, Smith focusing on what was at hand, and indeed going into the race, 9 at first. It was about battling to charge up to P2 and go hunting after Jack Wyborn, and then when Livingston had the unfortunate technical issues, had to chase him down as quickly as possible. And when I say him, chase Wyborn down, because suddenly the significance of it all became, it wasn't a battle for P2, it was a battle for the win. But no matter how much he threw at it, come the final lap, the gap was still too much to overhaul, and well, they're having to wait to see if Wyborn would make a mistake. But that mistake would never come. But still, the Disaster Prone Racing driver Neil Smith, third place in the championship now, and rising after the difficulties of the first 2 rounds. I can only imagine if he continues on this trend, could it be his first win of the season next week? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Now, coming on to our third interview for this evening, we've heard from first and second place in the AM class, and it's only fair now that we hear from third place in the AM class today, and we'll be hearing very shortly from Tilke Simsport Tours Satinder Dinsa. Having started P10 in the class, P35 overall, and batted his way through to a P3 in class, going as far as he could and picking up his first podium in his UKSimRacing GT3 career. And as he joins me now in the interview room, Satinder, what a drive from yourself. It's been a long time coming to pick up a podium, and what a way to do it at a circuit where overtaking is challenging to say the least, and starting P10 in your class on the grid in perhaps the closest qualifying session we've seen so far, and you made it through. You must be absolutely pleased.
Oh my gosh. You know, when I qualified, I didn't do so hot, so I realized that I might be on the front foot of trying to overtake. But in the end, I did not think a P3 was on. It was just one of those drives where you keep your head down and stay out of the crashes that are in front of you and kind of move your way forward.
Indeed, what approach to the race in terms of just steering clear of the danger and charging. We saw plenty of moments of you looking for moves and whatnot in the race. But coming back to qualifying firstly, P10 on the grid, I have to ask, with regards to the lap you were able to put together and your session as a whole, was it a positive session, or do you feel as though there was a bit more time out there given the closeness of the class?
Oh, so for quali, I was actually on a really, really good lap, and then the timer ran out in the hairpin. So I was probably half a second, if not a second faster. Because when I finished practice, I think I was P2 or P3, and I realized, wow, I think I have some pace here. And then to have that happen during quali, I realized it's not a great place to start.
Oh, goodness me. Well, if we do the theory crafting on that, if you had been able to put that qualifying lap together, I do believe in the end it would have seen you start in P2 and quite close. But still, we leave it as it was. We have to go with what happened on the day. So focusing on the race then, did that, as a result of your qualifying session, did you suddenly decide, okay, I need to change it up? Is my strategy going to have to be different as a result of this? Just take us through your thought process going into the race.
So what I did to practice was I did some AI races and tried to line up some overtakes and figure out what the lines would be. And overall, I figured out that it's very hard to overtake. So I thought that maybe just from pace alone, I would have to use that to my advantage and kind of slip it in whenever I could to get around people.
Well, you had to utilise quite a lot of that practice in the end, and from the very early stages, after things had calmed down on lap number 2, we saw you started to make moves, and it did look as though the hairpins, so turns 16 and also turns 5 and 7, seems to be your go-to places for the overtake, with a BMW which loves straight line speed.
Yeah, you know, the exit of the chicane right before the long back straight was really important. I just couldn't get it right, but thankfully with the straight line speed of the BMW, I was able to just send it into the hairpin because I felt like my braking was really confident into the hairpin, and that proved really well for me.
Well, being able to make such bold moves under braking, this circuit also very aggressive on tyre wear. I have to ask, were you starting to feel that tyre wear as the race went on, given the number of moves you're having to make?
No, to be honest, it felt fine. I had plenty of fuel. I could have fueled less if I needed to. Tires, I really didn't struggle. If anything, for the super long high-speed corners, I was lifting just a tad compared to quali, but no, not actually too big of an issue.
Well, that's interesting to hear, and I think that may have contributed quite significantly to the pace and the consistency you're able to bring to the table, feeling very comfortable in the car. Now, going through the first stint, we did see the technical issues and the initial potential retirement of Simon Andre Livingston. So suddenly, the charge went from the charge for P2 to the charge for the win of the race. Did that change the way you looked at the race, or was it just simply, I'm going to overtake as many as I can?
You know, I didn't really think too much of it. I tried to just keep my head down and drive as fast as I could and just finish as high as I really could.
And then coming to the end of the race, at what point did it dawn on you you were in third place?
Okay, so right when Simon, he DC'd, I looked at the standings on the back straight because I didn't want to take my eyes off the road, and I figured I was in 5th place and I was bumped up to 4th, and I was like, holy crap. I talked to Simon, my teammate, on the radio, and I was like, I think a podium is on. And he was like, just keep your head down and keep going for it. So in the end, I made it work.
Oh, and with that, I have to ask, what went through your mind, or was it a load of words that suddenly came out when you crossed the finish line, knowing you picked up your first podium?
When I got the white flag, my teammate was in front of me because he was a back marker, unfortunately. And I asked him, I was like, is this the white flag? And he said, yes. So that last entire lap, I was just holding on, trying to keep it smooth, don't do anything dumb. And then coming out of the left-hander, the final corner, I was just super happy to finally cross the line.
Oh, well, that's absolutely fantastic to hear. And what a way to come to the end of the Spanish doubleheader with your first podium. And, well, now the question is the sky the limit? Because in a week's time, we make our way stateside for Virginia International Raceway. How are you feeling for the VIR circuit?
You know, it's not a circuit that I've driven a lot, but at the same time, the same can be said for Aragon, considering I drove it just this week. So if I keep the practice in, I think if I have the pace, I could do well.
Well, we do look forward to seeing how you get on in a week's time at VIR. But just before we do let you go, Satinder, is there anybody you'd like to give a special mention or a thank you to live on the broadcast?
Absolutely. So first off, the boys at Tilke, I wouldn't be here without them. They've been helping me a lot, getting the setup set up, and my teammates encouraging me to do well. And of course, just want to give a shout out to my family. I know they're watching right now, so a major shout out to them. Glad I could give them a good performance for today.
Well, it's absolutely great to hear with the team behind you and also your family tuning in and getting behind you. And what a day you've had. Congratulations once again on third place in class today. And we'll thank you for joining me in the interview room. And hopefully we'll get to see plenty more from you in a week's time in the US of A.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So hearing that from Satinder Deenser, the AM driver of UKSimRacing Tower, who's finally bagged his first AM class podium of his UKSimRacing GT3 League career. And what a way to do it in a qualifying session where he missed out on the lap, which would have seen him qualify P2 in class, given that relative delta. He felt it was improving by between half a second to a whole second. But in the end, having to deal with what lay, the cards that had been laid on the table for him, and having practice overtaken against a good number of AI cars over the course of the week and getting that experience. We got to see that experience firsthand being deployed and really enjoying the straight line speed of the BMW and also its ability under braking. Not saying it's necessarily known for, but he found the sweet spot for it and he was able to make overtake after overtake, as we do see here an example making the move on Paul Joseph Cliffs, or attempted to, and then that overtake paying off later on the race. But either way, for the UKSimRacing Tower driver, you can hear it in his voice, absolutely jumping up and down. And what I wonder if he's going to add another podium to his career as of next week, or indeed go one step further, because of course there's always that win on the cards if he can strike it right. But coming from our AM podium finishers then, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from all three of them today, and thank you to them. We then come to our final interview, and we'll be very shortly hearing from our elite winner, and it's Rhys Saunders, the driver today, who seems to be absolutely uncontainable with regards to his pace, albeit had to battle hard to take the win. But as he gets ready to join me now in the interview room, we'll hear about that all and more. And what has been, I think, a win that he's felt as though has been coming for some time. And as he does join me now in the interview room, Rhys, it's been quite a time coming, albeit you've had a short UKSimRacing GT3 League career thus far, having joined us towards the tail end of Season 10. But you've always shown promises of pace and also worked the strategy out. And today was your day by looks things at MotorLand Aragón, with a qualifying session that almost saw you take pole. And then in the race, it came down to fine margins, but you made it happen. You must be absolutely proud of your achievements today.
Over the moon. Doesn't quite feel real, but no, it was really, really tight competition. Damien's qualifying pace was great. He made it a little bit further than he did last week off the pole, but no, it was really tight, especially with the strategy as well. I actually took a little bit too much fuel and nearly got mugged by just about everybody on pit exit. But no, it was really, really tough out there. And yeah, I'm glad it came together. I think I had points throughout the race at Fuji and also at Jerez. I was probably the quickest car on track, but for one thing or another, couldn't get the track position. Today, all dropped in together, and yeah, absolutely thrilled.
Oh, indeed. And coming onto it in components, we start off with qualifying. It was less than a tenth, 88,000 separated yourself and Lobbit from pole position. Not quite able to take the pole. I have to ask, was it out there and you just couldn't find it, or was that lap that put you P2 on the grid the best you could get out the car?
It was probably better than the best I could get out of the car, to be honest with you, Paul. Qualifying is probably the weakest area of myself as a sim racer. So, to get P2 was brilliant. I mean, track position, it's usually where I struggle at the start of a race. So, yeah, P2 was probably better than I'd have hoped for going into qualifying.
And then coming out the other side of qualifying, we went green flag racing, and well, a little bit of a slow start for yourself and Lobbit on the front row. Saw Chris Kirkland try and send it up the inside for P2. The pro driver seemed very eager to get ahead, but you managed to fight your way back. Was that expected, or was it one of those, okay, you've got to react to this now?
Oh, it was. It's a challenge. I race on a single monitor, so I was looking out my left-hand window, looking at Damien, and I almost preempted the start, and then just lifted just as he went, and it cost me that kind of car length or two. Kirkland got the inside, and yeah, I just had to follow him. And then on lap 4, there was a little bit of netcode between the two of us, and that gave me the run into turn 1. But yeah, he fought hard but fair. I think he realised that the between the two classes. There wasn't really any points on offer trying to keep us guys behind. But no, his pace was absolutely on the spot. But I could just see Damien slowly starting to get away as I was stuck behind him.
And then as the first stint went on, you managed to find your way past Chris Kirkland quite quickly and started to close up to Damien. And then we saw a little bit of contact between the two of you into turn 5. Your thoughts on that from your perspective?
It was just an incident, just to quote Leclerc and Verstappen. But no, he was. It was really hard racing between the two of us. We'd had a good scrap at Fuji, and he defended hard there too. There was a point a few laps beforehand where we almost collided with each other. I felt that he'd moved under braking, but it was just, it was tough. It was hard out there. When I did get the run into turn 1, we'd run side by side through 1, 2, and 3. He just about got his nose ahead going into turn 5, and I was right under his bumper. And then, it was the softest of touches for it kind of spun him and turned him to the inside. And that kind of gave him the lead in front of Erik.
Indeed, a very close racing, like you say, and we also did see what I like to refer to as the Saunders special, the very late braking a bit earlier on into the turn 16 hairpin when you went all for it, and you built yourself a bit of a reputation for being the one who's bold and able to do the send, much like, say, Daniel Ricciardo from Formula 1. With the BMW, it does seem as though it's a car that you enjoy very much and you're able to race closely with others against. Just take us through what gives you that confidence with the BMW.
I'm going to quote my team boss at this point, Graham Sesford, and it's just practice, practice, practice. There's another saying that goes on to it, but it's not repeatable on broadcast. But it really is just, kind of grinding through it in the week, doing lots of official races and just getting comfortable in the car. It seems to have a bit of a straight line advantage over the Porsches. There's a lot of Porsches at the front of our field, Paul. But it has a bit of a straight line advantage, which helps when I'm approaching the corner. I can then, be a bit more aggressive on the brakes. I wasn't actually trying to overtake Damien into the hairpin. It was just he'd caught me out as he'd moved back onto the racing line in the braking zone. I got a bit caught out and he cleared us both out. So it was more of a reaction to avoid him than a genuine overtaking attempt.
Well, that's a fair play. To be fair, it was, I think, one of the moments of the day, and a lot of people tuning in absolutely loved how close you two came together at that point. But after you'd made the move and taken the lead of the race, from that point onwards, it wasn't over yet. We did see the chase from Erik Røseth for Racing Lab Esports AM, and we also saw Ryan Moles figure his way into the race after the pit stops. It looks as though, Sonny, you were the driver who had to keep your cool and not make a mistake.
Yeah, I finished the race with about 6 litres of fuel, which is about 2 seconds in a pit stop. So I finished the race with way too much fuel. It meant that Ryan, despite being 2 seconds back as we entered the pits, we were side by side on pit exit. Fortunately, I was on the inside and managed to just get my nose ahead. And then as we came out onto the track, Erik split the pair of us and his tyres were up to temperature. He'd obviously pitted, I think, 2 laps earlier. I had a very quick looking Erik who... was right behind me, and I'd seen him make the move at Jerez, and I thought if he gets a chance, he'll do it anywhere. So it was just a case of staying calm, not letting the adrenaline get to me too much, and waiting for the tyre temps to build. And then once they got into their window, thankfully I was able to take some of the pressure off.
And just on that, towards the end of the race, we did see you start to break away, and then it became more of a battle behind you for P2 between Røseth and Moles. At that point, was there a slight grin starting to appear on your face in terms of, I've got this in the bag? Or was it a, no, head down, we're getting to that checker flag, then we'll smile about it?
Yeah, no, there was definitely a few grins starting to creep on in. It was just a case of keeping the pace up. I'd got my teammate Mark van Dalen in my ear, and he was saying how, yeah, you're not there yet. You've got to close it out. I was planning my my victory speech. I was going to say it was easy, but now that the adrenaline's worn off, it was far from it. They'd pushed me all the way. But yeah, I think it was about 2.5 seconds at the end. So comfortable in the end, but it took me about 15, 16 laps to secure the margin.
And just when you came up to the line, checker flag waving, was there, what words came out your mouth? Or what was going through your head at that point for your first win of the season?
Just relief. Just relief. It was the one that I thought maybe I won't be able to target the overall championship when I came into the series. GT3 is not a strong point of mine. But I was hoping I'll be able to, pick up a win or two throughout the season. So it's very much mission accomplished there. But yeah, just a bit of relief. The chap that I thought would be challenging for the championship wasn't here tonight. Hakon. I'm not sure where he was, but he's the other BMW representative at the front of the field most weeks. So it'll be good to see him come back at Virginia.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of Virginia, with your results there, you've now moved to P2 in the championship, 10 points off of Røseth, our championship leader, and VIR awaits us before we wrap up the first half of the season. How are you feeling for a visit to the US of A?
I'm depressed, basically. I can't stand Virginia. It is a bogey track of mine. And normally I'd take Graham's advice and I'd do practice. But I'm doing 2 trips to Scotland this week. So, yeah, I don't have any spare time at all, really. So I might get an hour or two of practice in, which is nothing compared to what I've done for previous rounds of the season.
I see. It sounds as though next week may be a bit of damage limitation, but we'll have to wait and see how it goes for you. And I hope you do have a safe and happy trip to Scotland, or both trips, I should say. But just before we do let you go, Rhys, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the team, Team Year One. I've been with them for a couple of years now. Thank you to Cessford for putting it all together and giving us one of the best looking cars on the grid, in my opinion. Thank you to Mark van Dalen, always being the calming voice in my ear. And thank you to the missus as well, because I did promise we'd watch the end of the film we were watching last night. And yeah, that's not happening. So a big thank you to her. I'm in the doghouse. It's probably cost me dinner. But no. And thank you to you as well, Paul. So I always enjoy watching these broadcasts back on a Monday.
Well, Rhys, a big thank you to yourself as well for joining me in the interview room. And, well, if we have put you in the doghouse with the missus, I do apologise in time, but it's worth it for your first win of the season. Congratulations once again on a fantastic drive from start to finish. And, well, may not have as much time to practice for Virginia International Raceway, but we'll look forward to seeing you there next weekend. So hearing there from Rhys Saunders, the Team Year 1 driver, absolutely delivering today when the pressure was on. And indeed, having to go from hunter to hunted in a very quick period of time. At the start of the race, having been under pressure from Chris Kirkland. And it was interesting to hear the fact that when they went green flag racing, Lobbit had just timed it right. So when Saunders was lifting off the throttle in order to stay behind, as per the procedure, that's when Damien Lobbit went. And that timing was the difference between Saunders being able to attack into turn 1 and having to battle Chris Kirkland all the way out to turn 5 and onwards on the opening lap, but being able to get back to P2 overall quickly and keeping the pro leader at bay. Saunders went to work. We saw some absolutely fantastic racing between himself and Damien Lobbit. Unfortunately, a tiny little bit of contact at turn number 5 seemed to settle the difference between them, and that will likely be looked at by the stewards post-round if it is reported. But at the same time, nothing can take away from the fact that after that, Saunders was not free to run away. He was pressured by Erik Røseth and Ryan Moles after a strategic gamble that worked out very well, albeit Saunders admitting that he took too much fuel on and should have spent a second less in the pit as a minimum. But still, the point being, he had to work hard all the way to the finish, and in the end, find the pace, to dig in and break away, and that's exactly what happened to bring on home his first win of the season for Team Year 1, and what a win it is. But that concludes our post-round interviews today, ladies and gentlemen. We've heard from our 4 drivers, including the 3 AM podium sitters of the AM class winner of TPA Racing's Jack Wyborn, the second place finisher for Disaster Prone Racing of Neil Smith, and then Satinder Deensert from TG Simsport Tyre, your third and final place finisher on the AM podium. And we just heard from Rhys Saunders from Team Year 1, the elite driver bringing home his first win of his UKSimRacing GT3 League career, and what a win it was today. Thank you to them for joining me in the interview room, and congratulations to all 4 of our interviews for their fantastic performances. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that brings our interviews to a close, but it also gives us an opportunity to take a quick pause and take a look at the class standings provisional after round number 3. We start off with the elite class standings then, and we can see here that Erik Røseth continues to lead the way by 10 points over Rhys Saunders. The gap between the two of them standing slightly bigger compared to the gap that Røseth had over his peers going into this round. Such is the battle for second place at the moment, and Røseth will feel as though he's on top right now to try and break away. Meanwhile, in P3, Peter Cox continues to hold on to that final spot of the top 3. 2 points clear of Ryan Moles, with there being the constant exchange for that third place, and Joe Noon P5 there in what was looking to be a very strong result today, but the Empire Motorsport driver had a difficult end to his race and therefore missing out on the opportunity to leap up to P4. Damien Lobbit feeling frustrated, I think, in the fact that denied the win once again, albeit after the difficulties of round number 2. He'll be grateful to fish inside the top 4, but the Symphony Esports driver there down 71 points, and 9 time is running out to get a win on the board, with Hekon Gestad not in attendance today, dropping a P7, and then Ryan Walker, Sam Sherwood and Ryan Davies completing a top 10, with Ryan Walker's performance moving into P8 ahead of Sherwood and Davies for the first time this season. Thomas Aspel P11, the best of the rest there, ahead of Mark Davison, with Sire Anthony P13 ahead of Nathan Scott, then Sam Congreve, Martinson, Andy Jones completing the elite standings. And as we come onto the pro class standings, we can see Aaron McGregor leads the way still, albeit by a margin that has been slightly cut now, down to 12 points over Darren Sharples. Sharples not quite having a stellar performance today, but still picking up some key points, and therefore keeping the pressure on McGregor, but in return he's got to be wary of the fact he's got pressure growing from behind in the form of Daniel Pays, who's charging after him and now only 8 points away. Matt Strand and Casper Tunstead complete your top 5 for Racing Lab Esports and Free and Peak Sim Racing respectively. 8 points between them, and Tunstead only inside the top 5 based on result countback ahead of Alexander Trina and McCalson, with Casper Brotner P7 a further 4 points behind and only ahead of Chris Kirkland based on result countback. And speaking of Chris Kirkland, picking up all the points today for the win plus pole and the fastest lap in class, the Downforce Racing driver absolutely delivering. And could this be a sign of the American charging forth and now building a championship campaign? We'll have to wait and see at VIR whether he's able to make it another win on the books or at least a podium. And then Bevan Thompson and Chris Constable completing the top 10, with Constable having a difficult race and therefore losing out on some major points, which now see him vulnerable to dropping outside the top 10. Best of SP11, it's Alan Lever ahead of Aaron Beaver, with Mark Johnson, Lewis Payne and Rob Armstrong completing your top 15. And with a second place performance today, a deserved one at that, on his essentially his first points accrued this season, Phillips GP's Giles Phillips moves to P16 immediately. 4 points clear of Richard Jones, with Kerry Kokorin, Brandon Hay and Rudy Avitzland completing the top 20. And then Ian Manners only getting 4 points in his debut due to a late incident, but still the 52 racing driver will know there's plenty of rounds to go, and he's shown great pace here today. And he's ahead of Martin Fernie, John Watt and Joe McManus, who've yet to score points and complete your pro stands at 24 drivers. Coming on to the AM class, final Drivers' Championship here. We can see Jack Wyborn leads the way now by 8 points ahead of Steinar Sani, with Wyborn picking up his first win of the season, and Sani not quite on the pace in qualifying today, but able to recover to a top 5 finish come the end. And then Neil Smith still there in P3, 10 points off of the top 2, but breaking away from the rest of the field. And it does seem as though at the moment the top 3 really now trying to make the championship their own. Stephen Andre Livingston would argue that's not the case, being P4 there on 78 points, denied today by a technical issue which saw him to come into the pits for an extended period of time and finish 2 laps down, but still plenty of time to go for the Racing Lab Esports AM driver. And if he's able to match the pace he showed today in the upcoming rounds, then he could definitely leap right back into contention. With then Stephen Park Hamilton P5, the TPA Racing driver has not had luck go his way recently, and he'll be hoping that luck is with him in the end of the first half of the season next week. And Stuart Pearson moves into P6 for the first time this season on 66 points, 1 off of the top 5 and 2 clear Thomas Barjac, with another strong brace of the Sun Steady Racing driver. Consistency does seem to be his motto, with Paul Joseph Cliff, Satinder Deensa and James Conley completing the top 10, and that first podium for Satinder Deensa moving him to P9, 2 points clear of the final spot of the top 10, and then a further 4 points clear of Best Jerez P11 Sean Gaffney, with Matt Edmondson, Marvin Cruz, Ricky Pink and John Doe completing your top 15. And keep your eyes on Matt Edmondson in particular. Showed great pace today for top 5 finish. But unfortunately, UKSimRacing Clark driver had an unfortunate incident which dropped him outside the top 5. But he's definitely on course to start building some momentum. And outside the top 50, we have Matt Maddox ahead of BJ Alvarez, with Simon Hartley, Sander Rustad and Frank Klein completing your top 20 AM classification. We then come onto the Teams Championship last but not least, and you can see the ProTech Motorsport leading the way by only 3 points currently ahead of Racing Lab Esports AM, and the battle between the two of them is definitely already going down to the wire, and there is a further, 28 points to TPA Racing, moving to P3, and are building more and more momentum as they try to hunt down the top 2. However, it's not easy for TPA Racing, in the fact that only 3 points go UKSimRacing Price, where Old Dudes and Cars are further 8 points behind, and we can see a similar gap there to Racing Lab Esports AM2 who are P6. It's then at 20 points to UKSimRacing Clark, which are 14 points clear of UKSimRacing Moss, and then Empire Motorsport and Tiki Simsport Kimmy complete your top 10, and 7 points outside the top 10, best of the rest is Symphony Esports. No, they've got plenty of points to Steel Crew, 4 points clear of Team Year 1, with Downforce Racing, Slow and Steady Racing and Disaster Prone Racing completing your top 15. The top 20 is rounded out by Tiki Sim Sport Tahoe, 1 point clear of Racing Lab Esports and 3, then Peak Sim Racing, Ignium Motorsport and Satellite Racing. Then 4 points outside the top 20 in P1, it's Olympus Esports, with Simulation Motorsport there still trying to build some more points to get back inside the top 20 after a great start to the season, but a difficult last couple of rounds. Then Spike Racing had a Spy Racing Team and ProTech Academy complete the top 25. Then to round out the team standings is Team Sim Racing Chicago ahead of Philips GP, with 52 Racing, Team Norway Racing and 9 Shiza Esport, I should say, completing your standings. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, those standings are provisional, of course. We'll give you an update on those as of next week, but it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the UKSimRacing community, perhaps you're sat there right now and want to be on the grid for a future season of the UKSimRacing GT3 League, and want to know more about other series we've got going, or just a bit more about the community, perhaps you just want to join us and be part of some of our special events and also get to know us all, we'll do head to our website first and foremost for all the information about UKSimRacing. You saw it pop up on the broadcast earlier on today, and our web address once again is uksimracing.co.uk. Alternatively, if you don't want to go to our website and you're more of a social media person, you can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/UKSimRacing_, where you can keep up to date with all the latest escapades, trials and tribulations of the UKSimRacing community and also the UKSimRacing official esports teams. But with that, we'd like to say a big thank you to our affiliates, without whom this would not be possible. We start off there with Swello Meta Sim Racing Coaching, and with regards to Swello Meta Sim Racing Coaching, with Swello Meta being the motor racing checklist creator, his racing coaching can help take your sim racing to the next level. Whether you're looking to gain a 10th, improve your approach to the racing line, or develop your consistency in your driving, Swello Meta has a coaching course to meet your needs. Plus, with him being a multi-time champion of official iRacing series, including the 2021 PSCC, you know you're receiving coaching for the very best in the industry. We also have Race Anywhere, the provider of curated sim racing equipment aimed to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. Demon Tweaks, the provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide, so no matter what your level of discipline, Demon Tweaks can help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions. SimLab, the leading manufacturer of high-quality sim racing-related hardware, as a proud partner of Mercedes-AMG Petronas Esports, SimLab aims to enhance virtual racing experiences with uncompromising solutions that push the boundaries of esports and make them the go-to brand for quality sim racing rigs. And lastly, Amazon, the company trying to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, including but not limited to Amazon Fire TV, Amazon Fire tablets, and Amazon Prime. But now, ladies and gentlemen, our drivers will look to take it up a gear as we conclude the first half of the season in a week's time on Sunday, the 16th of July, 2023, with a visit to the United States of America for the Virginia International Raceway, also known as VIR to those who love it most. It is a circuit that's fast-flying, highly aggressive, and full of elevation changes. But who's going to go into the fortnight break on a high? Well, we'll find out then. But until then, we've been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX11 Walsh, also known as Britain a Split, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.